Hey guys, tonight we're going to travel back to a time when our own planet was an alien world. A silent, rocky sphere spinning in space, almost completely unrecognizable. Imagine you are floating in orbit above the Earth, 600 million years ago. Below you, the continents are not green and blue, but scattered, barren patches of ochre, rust, and grey. There is no great wall to see, no city lights, not even a single fleck of green. The familiar shapes are all wrong, twisted into a geography of a forgotten age. The moon hangs in the blackness, but it's unnervingly large, closer to the Earth than you've ever seen it. A silent, pockmarked giant. Now, let's descend. We move through a thin, strange atmosphere and plunge into the vast, shallow, global ocean. Beneath the waves, you find that this world is not dead. It's teeming with a quiet, ghostly kind of life. Strange shapes, like quilted mats and feathery fronds, litter the seafloor, swaying gently in the currents. They are life's first draft, a collection of beings so alien it's hard to believe they share a planet with us. We'll watch these first, simple life forms cling to existence for millennia, secretly setting the stage for everything to come. They will build the very air we breathe, experiment with bizarre body plans, and then, in what is a mere geological blink of an eye, unleash a creative force that will define the future of all life. So what did this first animal life actually look like? How could a silent world of slime and mats give rise to the ferocious dance of predators and prey? And when we look at these ghostly shapes, are we seeing our own impossibly distant ancestors, or a completely failed branch of the evolutionary tree that left no descendants? Thanks to the latest fossil evidence, painstakingly recovered from the wind-swept deserts of Namibia and the ancient rock of the Australian outback, we're going to piece together this lost world, this Eden of whispers and shadows. Frankly, if you were dropped here without a submersible, you wouldn't survive a single second to realize where you went wrong. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. That small click sends a big signal to the algorithm that long-form, serious educational content still matters. And to me, it's an incredibly meaningful show of support. Thank you so much for helping keep this channel going strong. It always fascinates me to see where you're all tuning in from. Let me know in the comments where you are in the world and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing on a shoreline 600 million years in the past. The day feels frantic, rushing by in only 22 hours. The giant, close moon exerts a monstrous pull on the oceans, creating tides that sweep inland with a force we can barely comprehend, then retreat, leaving vast, sterile mudflats glistening under a sun that feels somehow weaker, dimmer than the one you know. The air is thin, with only a fraction of today's oxygen. You'd be gasping within minutes. The land itself is a desolate vista of raw geology. There is no soil, just endless plains of rock dust, gravel, and stone, carved by winds that howl unimpeded across the empty continents. Any rain that falls is acidic, a weak carbonic acid solution that chemically weathers the bare rock, a process happening on a scale that is hard to imagine. This is a world waiting for life to conquer it. This period of deep time is known as the Ediacaran, named for the Ediacara Hills in Australia, where the first significant fossils of these strange life forms were discovered and identified. you turn your attention from the barren land to the shallow sea. This is where the real action is. Wading into the water, you see that the seafloor is coated in a thick, greenish-brown, rubbery layer. This is a microbial mat, a vast living carpet of cyanobacteria. These mats are the true rulers of this ancient world. For billions of years, they have been the dominant life form, quietly photosynthesizing, pulling carbon dioxide from the air and releasing the waste product that will change everything: oxygen. Here and there, you see strange, dome-like structures rising from the mat-covered seafloor. These are stromatolites, and they represent some of the most ancient evidence of life we have on Earth. You can think of them as living rocks or bacterial skyscrapers, built layer by painstaking layer as the microbes on top grow towards the faint sunlight, and the layers below become fossilized. They are monuments to a form of life that is patient beyond all measure. As your eyes adjust, you begin to see the larger, stranger forms we glimpsed from above, the ghosts in this machine. And it's here that the real mystery begins. Paleontologists still argue fiercely over what these early life forms were. Were they true animals, a unique kingdom of life that went extinct, fungi, or something else entirely? They had no obvious heads, no legs, no mouths. They seem to be nature's first strange experiment in building something bigger than a microbe. As a wave washes over the shore, you catch a scent on the wind. It's not the salty, fishy smell of a modern ocean. It's the smell of a pond thick with algae, mixed with a sharp, metallic tang from the exposed, iron-rich rocks being weathered by the acidic rain. It is the scent of a new world being born from an old, sterile one. You wade deeper into the lukewarm, primordial sea, your feet sinking slightly into the rubbery microbial mats. The strange shapes you saw from the shore are now all around you. This is the Garden of Ediacara, and you are walking through the fossilized remains of nature's first draft of animal life. The most striking thing about these creatures is their profound otherness. You look for features you recognize, for a mouth, a gut, eyes, or limbs, but you find none. They are built on principles that are utterly alien to the modern animal kingdom. They are life, but not as we know it. Your eyes catch a pattern on the seafloor, a flat, oval-shaped organism that looks for all the world like a discarded, quilted bath mat. It's about the size of your hand, ribbed with segmented lines that radiate outwards. This is Dickinsonia. As you watch, you imagine it moving with imperceptible slowness across the slimy surface, absorbing nutrients directly through its body wall. It has no mouth to eat with, no gut to digest with. It simply lies on its food and soaks it in. It is perhaps the most passive, low-effort approach to a meal ever devised. Further out, in slightly deeper water, you see something that looks like a feathery plant or a sea pen. Its leaf-like frond is anchored to the seabed by a small disc, swaying gracefully in the sluggish current. This is Charnia. But this is no plant. You are far too deep for sunlight to penetrate. This is an animal, living a life of absolute stillness, filtering microscopic food particles directly from the water. It is a living sculpture, a testament to a time when survival didn't require movement, just patience. This makes it one of the very first large, multi-celled organisms we know of in the entire fossil record. For 3 billion years, life had been almost exclusively microscopic. This is the moment it decided to get big. Then you spot something else, something that sends a jolt of familiarity through you. It's a small creature, only an inch or two long, and it's called Sprigina. Unlike the static fronds and flat mats, this one seems to have a purpose. It has a distinct front and back. A crescent-shaped shield at the front suggests a primitive head, and its body is clearly segmented with a line down the middle. It has bilateral symmetry, a left side that mirrors its right. This is a blueprint you recognize, the same fundamental body plan that governs everything from insects to fish to you. In Sprigina, you see not just a weird relic of the past, but a hint, a quiet promise of the future. This was a peaceable kingdom. With no real predators, life existed in a state of passive harmony. There were no jaws, no claws, no venom. Survival was a game of chemistry and absorption, not of chase and conflict. So how, you wonder, do we know anything at all about these delicate, soft-bodied ghosts? Their preservation is a miracle of geology. The only reason we have their fossils is because they were sometimes caught in a sudden event, perhaps buried by a storm that dumped a layer of fine sand over them, or smothered by a gentle fall of volcanic ash. This created a perfect impression of their bodies in the sediment, a natural death mask that hardened into rock over the eons, preserving their shape long after their soft tissues vanished. And yet, for all the fossils we find, the central mystery remains. The debate rages on whether these creatures were ancestors to later Cambrian animals, or a completely separate evolutionary experiment that was ultimately a dead end. Are you looking at the great-great-grandparents of all animal life, or a lost kingdom of creatures whose entire lineage was erased from the planet? The evidence is so strange that some scientists have even put forward a truly bizarre idea. They suggest that some of these Ediacaran organisms, with their incredibly high surface area to volume ratios and repeating fractal patterns, might not have been animals at all, but giant single-celled organisms called protists. Imagine a single cell, an amoeba, the size of a dinner plate. It's a mind-bending possibility that shows just how willing evolution is to experiment with the very definition of life. As you continue your exploration of this ancient seabed, you sense a subtle shift in the world around you. The water seems to hold a new kind of energy, a hidden potential. For tens of millions of years, the cyanobacteria in those endless slimy mats have been tirelessly pumping oxygen into the oceans and the atmosphere. That oxygen has been building up, reaching a critical threshold, and now the world is poised on the brink of a revolution. The slow, quiet, methodical pace of the Ediacaran is about to give way to something far more dynamic. Your attention is drawn away from the large, quilted mats and feathery fronds to something much smaller, something new. You kneel down and examine the seafloor, and there you see them. Tiny, tube-like fossils, no bigger than a grain of rice. They look like miniature stacks of calcified thimbles or ice cream cones, nested one inside the other. This is Claudina, and though it is small, it is one of the most important organisms on the planet right now. It is a pioneer, a revolutionary. Claudina is one of the very first creatures to figure out how to build a hard, mineralized shell. This is a breathtaking innovation. For the first time, an animal has its own personal suit of armor. You can immediately see the advantage in a world where something, somewhere, is learning how to hunt. But the shell is more than just protection. It is also a rigid framework for muscles to attach to and pull against. This allows for stronger, more defined movements than were ever possible for the soft, quilted bodies of the older life forms. It is the beginning of skeletons, the scaffolding upon which all future complexity will be built. As you look closer at these tiny shells, you notice something that sends a chill through you, a sign of the violence that is to come. Some of the Cloudina fossils are punctured with small, perfectly circular holes. This isn't random damage from being tossed in the waves. This is a calling card. It is the telltale sign of a predator, something that has drilled through the shell to get to the soft animal inside. This is it. You are looking at the earliest direct evidence of predation in the entire fossil record. The peaceable kingdom is over. The arms race has begun. The changes aren't just happening with the animals themselves, but with the very ground beneath your feet. You notice that in places, the smooth, uniform microbial mats are disturbed, cut through with shallow grooves and trails. You are seeing the first traces of burrowing. Life is no longer content to simply sit on top of the seabed. It has started to move through it. This is the beginning of what scientists call the agronomic revolution. These first burrowers, likely simple worm-like creatures, are fundamentally re-engineering the planet from the ground up. By churning through the sediment, they are aerating it, changing its chemical composition and paving the way for entirely new ecosystems to develop beneath the surface. And you realize these first subterranean explorers had a very clever strategy. By digging into the muck, they found a safe haven from the new predators beginning to patrol the surface. But they also stumbled upon an enormous, untouched buffet, all of the decaying organic matter that had been slowly building up within the sediment for millennia. It was a brand new way to make a living. With these new, more active lifestyles taking hold, the classic Ediacaran creatures begin to fade. As the fossil record moves towards the end of this period, the diversity of the large, frond-like organisms dwindles. Their passive, gentle way of life is simply no longer competitive in a world that is rapidly discovering claws and teeth and shells. Their time is passing. The world is holding its breath. The stage is set for a biological Big Bang. But what is the final trigger? Scientists still debate the main driver for the upcoming explosion of life. Was it the rise in oxygen finally reaching a point where it could fuel energetic, mobile bodies? Was it the quiet evolution of a new set of genetic toolkits, like the master control genes that lay out an animal's body plan? Or was it an ecological cascade, a domino effect triggered by the evolution of the first true predators, forcing everyone else to adapt or die? Whatever the cause, you can feel the tension in the water. The long, silent overture is ending, and the first chaotic, thunderous movement of the symphony of life is about to begin. You feel a shift in the current, a change in the very character of the world. The time of the Ediacaran has passed. You are now standing at the dawn of a new age, the Cambrian. The ghostly gardens of quilted fronds have vanished, their gentle reign brought to an end by the churning of the burrowers and the sharp sting of the first predators. The stage has been cleared, and a new, far more boisterous and inventive cast of characters is about to make its entrance. But you don't see them yet, not in their complete forms. Instead, you notice something in the sediment. You scoop up a handful of sand from the seafloor and let the water drain through your fingers. It's not smooth. It's gritty, sharp, and it glitters with 1,000 tiny foreign shapes. This is the first sign of the revolution, a phenomenon scientists call the small shelly fauna. All around the globe, in the rocks that mark the very beginning of the Cambrian, we find this layer of microscopic debris. It's a collection of tiny, disarticulated parts, miniature spines, little cap-shaped shields, ridged plates, and hollow tubes. It's as if you've stumbled upon the floor of evolution's workshop, a place littered with the spare parts and prototypes for a new line of products. Life, it seems, has collectively discovered the miracle of biomineralization. It has learned to pull minerals from the seawater and build with them. This is the invention of the exoskeleton, a skeleton on the outside. It's a personal suit of armor in a world that is becoming more dangerous by the day. But it's also more than that. It's a sturdy frame that prevents a creature from drying out if it gets stranded in a shallow tidal pool. And crucially, it provides solid leverage points for muscles. Movement can now be more powerful, more precise. The soft, slow, shuffling world is about to become hard, fast, and sharp. You look up from the seafloor and take in the geography of this new world. The continents are still clustered in the southern hemisphere, a great jigsaw puzzle of land that leaves a vast, uninterrupted ocean to the north. This arrangement creates enormous stretches of warm, shallow continental shelf, bathed in tropical sunlight. The planet has become a perfect laboratory for evolution, a sprawling, sun-drenched petri dish where new ideas can be tested, refined, and perfected. It's in places like this, in the rocks of modern-day Wales, that the first geologists in the 19th century began to piece together this chapter of Earth's history. They named it the Cambrian period, after Cambria, the old Latin name for Wales, forever linking that small country to this monumental global transformation. What allowed this sudden burst of creativity? Why here? Why now? The rocks themselves hold the chemical clues. Geochemical analysis of these ancient layers tells a story of rising sea levels as the planet warmed and the last vestiges of any Ediacaran ice melted. This flooding of the continents created the vast, shallow seas. At the same time, the chemistry of the seawater was changing. It became saturated with calcium carbonate, the primary mineral used to build shells. It's as if the world suddenly provided not just the space, but also all the raw building materials for a new construction boom. And yet, this sudden appearance of shells and skeletons in the fossil record poses one of the biggest questions in all of paleontology. Paleontologists argue whether the Cambrian Explosion was a truly rapid event where all these new body plans evolved in a geological flash, or if it was simply the moment when life evolved hard parts, making it suddenly and spectacularly visible in the fossil record for the first time. The ancestors of these animals may have been evolving slowly in the Ediacaran, but as soft, squishy things, they left almost no trace. So, was it a real explosion of life? Or an explosion of evidence? You let the last of the strange, shelly sand fall from your hand and imagine walking along a Cambrian beach. You wouldn't be collecting the beautiful spiraled shells of snails or the smooth, rounded forms of clams. The beach would be a hazardous place, and the sand itself would be composed of this bizarre, sharp shrapnel. It would be a sand made of the tiny, discarded components of the new world's inhabitants, a testament to the chaotic, brilliant, and sometimes messy process of invention. The age of spare parts is over. The workshop has finished its prototypes, and the assembly lines are running at full capacity. As you watch, the tiny, sharp bits of shell you saw in the sand begin to assemble themselves into the finished products. And crawling out of the evolutionary fog, the undisputed star of the show appears. You see one scuttling over a microbial mat, a creature that is at once alien and strangely familiar. It is a trilobite. You watch it move, a marvel of biological engineering. Its body, true to its name, is divided into 3 distinct lobes running from head to tail. Its exoskeleton isn't a single rigid box, but a series of overlapping segments, like a suit of articulated armor, giving it both protection and flexibility. Tucked underneath, hidden from view, a multitude of jointed legs ripple in a synchronized wave, propelling it smoothly across the sediment. It is a perfect little organic machine, an all-terrain vehicle for the Cambrian seafloor. But its most revolutionary feature is on its head. It has eyes. And not just simple pits that can sense light and dark. These are complex, crescent-shaped compound eyes, made of many individual lenses capable of forming a true image of the world. For the first time, an animal can properly see its surroundings, and in doing so, it changes the rules of the game forever. The success of this design is staggering. Trilobites would go on to become one of the most successful animal groups of all time, persisting for nearly 300 million years. They diversified into over 20,000 species, filling every conceivable ecological role, from active predators hunting worms to passive filter feeders sifting nutrients from the mud. You pan your view across the bustling seafloor and see that the trilobites are not alone. The creative floodgates have opened. You see early mollusks, the ancestors of snails, slowly gliding on their muscular foot. You see brachiopods, which look like clams at first glance, but are anchored to the ground by a fleshy stalk, opening their 2 shells to filter food from the water. You even spot primitive multi-armed echinoderms, the first draft of what will eventually become starfish and sea urchins. What you are witnessing is something truly profound. This isn't just the appearance of a few new creatures, it's the establishment of the fundamental blueprints for the entire animal kingdom. Almost every major body plan, or phylum, that exists today, from the arthropods with their jointed legs to the mollusks with their shells, gets its start right here, in the Cambrian. This period didn't just invent a few new animals, it invented the very concept of what an animal is. How can we possibly know what these creatures looked like in such detail, especially their soft, squishy parts? The answer lies in a few precious geological miracles. The most famous is a fossil site in the Canadian Rockies known as the Burgess Shale. Here, about 508 million years ago, an entire marine community living at the base of a reef was swept away by an underwater mudslide. The fine, silty mud buried them instantly in an environment with no oxygen, preventing decay. The result is a fossil jackpot, a perfect snapshot preserving not just the hard shells, but the ghostly imprints of soft tissues, delicate antennae, feathery gills, digestive tracts, and even nerves. It's an unprecedented window into this lost world. The evolution of those complex, image-forming eyes you saw on the trilobite was a gargantuan leap forward. It was a primary catalyst for the explosion of diversity. The world was transformed from a blurry, abstract landscape of chemical signals and touch into a high-definition, visual arena. This kicked the predator-prey relationship into a terrifying new gear. Now, you could see your next meal from a distance, but it could also see you coming. This visual feedback loop drove the evolution of speed, camouflage, armor, and ever sharper senses. Still, a fundamental question remains, one that occupies the heart of evolutionary biology. Whether the genetic instructions for this diversity were slowly built up during the Ediacaran or rapidly assembled during the Cambrian is a central question in evolutionary biology. Did life spend 500 million years quietly writing a vast cookbook of genetic recipes and then suddenly decide to try them all at once? Or was it inventing these recipes on the fly in a frantic burst of creative genius? You look again at the trilobite as it pauses on a rock. You focus on its beautiful crystalline eye. And here lies one of nature's most elegant and quirky tricks. Those lenses are not made of soft biological tissue like your own eye. They are made of calcite, the very same mineral that makes up the creature's shell. Each individual lens is a single, perfectly shaped, optically pure calcite crystal. The trilobite, in its evolutionary brilliance, figured out how to see through its own skeleton. You are watching the trilobite with its miraculous calcite eyes, a creature perfectly formed for its time. But the new world of sight has a dark side. The ability to see is also the ability to be seen. The vibrant, bustling seafloor is no longer just a garden of opportunity. It is an arena, and a shadow has just fallen over the little trilobite. You look up and see it gliding through the water above, a creature of breathtaking size and terrifying grace. The Cambrian piece is over. The super-predators have arrived. The creature is Anomalocaris, the abnormal shrimp, and it is the undisputed king of this world. It can grow up to 1 meter long, a leviathan in a world where most life is still measured in inches. Its body is sleek and flexible, propelled by a series of undulating fins along its sides that allow it to cruise through the water with silent efficiency. 2 large compound eyes are mounted on stalks, swiveling independently, giving it a nearly 360-degree view of its domain. It sees everything. At the front of its body are 2 long, spiny appendages, jointed and wickedly barbed, which it uses to snatch and hold its prey. And beneath them, its most alien feature, a circular mouth, shaped like a pineapple ring, lined with sharp, grinding plates that contract to crush its victims. This is the great white shark of the Cambrian, a perfectly designed killing machine. The sheer creative energy of this period is intoxicating. Evolution isn't just producing successful designs like the trilobite. It's also producing bizarre experiments, the weird wonders that seem to defy all logic. You see one swim past, a creature called Opabinia. It has a soft, segmented body, but sprouting from its head are 5 stalked eyes, like a bizarre candelabra. And from below them extends a long, flexible proboscis, like a vacuum cleaner hose with a grasping claw on the end. You watch it probe the mud, searching for unsuspecting worms. It's a vision from a fever dream, a beautiful, nonsensical masterpiece of natural selection. Nearby, a tiny, spiny creature walks stiffly across the seafloor on delicate, stilt-like legs. This is Hallucigenia, an animal so strange that when its fossils were first studied, paleontologists famously reconstructed it upside down and backwards, thinking its defensive spines were its legs, and its legs were tentacles on its back. This era was so strange it could even fool the experts. This unique explosion of life, from the familiar to the fantastical, is so distinct that it is now known as the Cambrian fauna, a special assemblage of organisms that represents one of life's most creative moments. This is the engine of the explosion, the evolutionary arms race. As predators like Anomalocaris develop better weapons, sharper claws, stronger jaws, keener eyesight, prey like the trilobites are forced to develop better defenses. This means thicker shells, more elaborate spines, the ability to curl into a defensive ball, or simply to swim faster. This relentless back-and-forth pressure between hunter and hunted creates a feedback loop that rapidly accelerates the pace of evolution, driving ever greater complexity. And we know for a fact that this hunt was real. We have the forensic evidence. Paleontologists have found fossilized trilobite shells with unmistakable W-shaped bite marks and injuries on them. These marks are a perfect match for the strange, squared-off mouthparts of Anomalocaris. We even have its fossilized droppings, known as coprolites, which are packed with the crushed-up, indigestible bits of trilobite shells. It's a prehistoric crime scene, solved 500 million years later. Still, even with this evidence, scientists debate the hunting strategy of Anomalocaris. Did it have the jaw strength to simply crush the heavily armored trilobites? Or did it use its formidable appendages to grab them, flip them over, and attack the softer, more vulnerable parts, leaving the main shell largely intact? The story of how we came to know this creature is almost as strange as the animal itself. For decades, the different parts of Anomalocaris were found separately and misidentified as three completely different animals. Its circular mouth was thought to be a fossilized jellyfish. Its spiny, grasping arms were classified as the body of a strange shrimp. This is where the abnormal shrimp name came from. And its main body was thought to be the fossil of a sea cucumber. It took until the 1980s for scientists to find a fossil with all the parts connected, finally assembling their Frankenstein's monster and realizing they had been looking at the scattered remains of the Cambrian's top predator all along. You turn your attention from the terrifying grandeur of Anomalocaris and the bizarre beauty of its prey. In the grand theatre of the Cambrian, these are the lead actors, drawing all the focus. But in the shadows of the stage, amongst the extras, a far more important story is quietly unfolding. You notice a small creature, no bigger than your finger, swimming past with a nervous twitching motion. It is leaf-shaped and flattened, with no armor, no spines, no obvious weapons. It looks vulnerable, insignificant. It looks like lunch. This is Pangaea. In a world obsessed with exoskeletons and sharp appendages, Pangaea is doing something radically different. It has an endoskeleton, an internal support structure. As it swims, you can just make out a faint, dark line running the length of its body. This is a notochord, a stiff, flexible rod made of cartilage. It is the precursor to the backbone. Arranged along this rod are distinct, V-shaped blocks of muscle. This combination of a flexible central rod and segmented muscles allows Pangaea to propel itself through the water with a powerful, side-to-side, fish-like motion. It is a new and incredibly efficient way to swim, a new way to move through the world. And Pangaea was not alone. In another of those geological miracles of preservation, the Chengjiang fossil beds in China, we have found an even older and more spectacular menagerie of our earliest relatives. Here, creatures like Milocunmingia swam in the Cambrian seas. They were even more advanced. They had a distinct head with primitive paired eyes. They had external gills for breathing. They may have even had a rudimentary skull made of cartilage. You are no longer just looking at a simple chordate. You are looking at what is arguably the very first vertebrate. It's an incredible contrast. The trilobites and their arthropod cousins are conquering the world with external armor, jointed legs, and complex mouth parts. They are the pinnacle of invertebrate design. And yet, here is this small, unassuming group of soft-bodied swimmers, with no armor and no legs, quietly pioneering a completely different solution to the puzzle of life. They are the underdogs in this story, likely spending most of their time trying to avoid being eaten by the more spectacular residents of the reef. But they carry within their simple bodies the blueprint for every fish, amphibian, reptile, bird, and mammal that will ever live. Our knowledge of these fragile ancestors comes from the incredible fidelity of these fossils. The fine-grained mud of places like Chengjiang didn't just preserve their outline. It captured the faint impressions of their internal anatomy. In these faint stains on the rock, we can see their guts, their gill arches, and that all-important notochord, confirming their place as the founders of our own lineage. And this isn't just some abstract ancient history. The fundamental body plan being tested by these humble swimmers is the very same one you possess right now. All vertebrates, from the tiniest fish to the largest whale, including you, are built on the chassis that was invented here in the Cambrian. The notochord of Pangaea is the evolutionary ancestor of the soft discs that cushion the vertebrae in your own spine. The simple nerve cord running along its back is the primitive version of your spinal cord, and the slits in its throat, which it used for filter feeding and breathing, were the starting point for a structure that would eventually, over hundreds of millions of years, be modified to become parts of your jaw and the delicate bones of your inner ear. Of course, the details of this crucial moment in our own deep history are still being pieced together. The exact placement of some of these early chordates on the vertebrate family tree is highly contentious, as the transition from invertebrate to vertebrate is one of the most significant and poorly understood events in evolution. For over a century, another mysterious group held the title of First Vertebrate. All over the world, paleontologists found billions of tiny, tooth-like fossils made of phosphate. They were called conodonts, but no one knew what the animal that produced them looked like. It was a huge puzzle until 1983, when a fossil of a complete eel-like creature was finally found, with the tiny teeth arranged in its head. This strange creature was briefly crowned our earliest ancestor, before even older and more fish-like fossils, like Milocunmingia, came to light. The search for our very first relative is an ongoing detective story. The frantic, explosive energy of the Cambrian begins to settle. The wild experiments are over, and the successful blueprints are now in mass production. You feel the water around you warm as you drift into a new geological period. The Ordovician. The world is changing again. Global temperatures are high, and sea levels have risen to be some of the highest in Earth's history. The continents are flooded, creating vast, shallow, tropical seas where deserts once stood. It is a planet of endless archipelagos and sun-drenched marine worlds. This new environment kicks off a different kind of evolutionary boom. It's not the frantic invention of new body plans like in the Cambrian, but something more measured, more intricate. Scientists call it the Great Ordovician Biodiversification Event. If the Cambrian Explosion was about inventing the first car, the Ordovician diversification is about building the entire city around it, with highways, suburbs, skyscrapers, and a complex, humming economy. Life isn't just becoming more varied, it's becoming more interconnected. The most profound innovation of this era is the rise of the first true reefs. These are not the stony corals you might see on a modern reef. Those are still far in the future. These pioneering reef builders are a strange collection of extinct creatures. You swim over vast structures built by tabulate corals, whose skeletons look like clusters of honeycomb. You see the twisting, horn-shaped skeletons of rugose corals. And binding it all together are massive layered mounds built by strange, sponge-like organisms called stromatoporoids. You glide through one of these Ordovician reef cities, and it is teeming with life. The three-dimensional structure has created 1 million new homes, 1 million new niches to be filled. Brachiopods, the dominant shelled animals of this era, encrust every available surface. You see delicate, lace-like fans spreading out into the current. These are bryozoans, or moss animals, entire colonies of microscopic creatures working together to filter food from the water. A new generation of trilobites, more advanced and specialized than their Cambrian ancestors, scuttles in the shadows, hunting for worms and scavenging for scraps. And everywhere you look, the scene is dominated by one of the era's most beautiful and iconic creatures. You see what look like gardens of feathery flowers, their long stems anchored to the reef, their petals swaying gracefully in the current. These are crinoids, or sea lilies. But despite their plant-like appearance, they are animals, related to starfish and sea urchins. Their feathery arms are incredibly efficient nets for catching passing particles of food. In some places, the seafloor is covered in them, creating dense, swaying meadows that stretch as far as you can see. It is a world of alien beauty, intricate and full of life. This Ordovician boom was truly massive. The fossil record shows that the number of distinct marine families tripled during this period. This event established the kind of complex, multi-layered ecosystem structure that would dominate the oceans for the next 200 million years. And we can track this explosion of life by painstakingly counting the different types of fossils found in Ordovician rocks all over the world. The evidence isn't just in the big things either. Under a microscope, the fossilized shells of tiny planktonic organisms from this time also show a staggering increase in diversity. A richer, more varied base for the food web meant there was more energy available to support the bustling metropolises of the reefs above. But what fueled this incredible surge in complexity? Ecologists debate whether this diversification was driven more by global cooling and continental geography, creating more isolated habitats, which would allow different populations to evolve in unique directions, or by the internal dynamics of the evolving ecosystems themselves, like the rise of vast filter-feeding communities that clarified the water and stabilized the food web. It's a classic nature versus nurture debate on a planetary scale. Did the changing world shape life, or did life begin to shape its world? The truth is likely a complex dance between the two, a feedback loop of geological change and biological innovation that sent life spiraling into ever greater richness and complexity. The rich, three-dimensional cities of the Ordovician reefs, with their endless meadows of crinoids and bustling communities of shelled creatures, are a tempting target. A dense concentration of life is a dense concentration of food, and evolution, in its relentless logic, has been busy designing new and terrifying predators to exploit it. You are swimming along the edge of the reef when a long, straight shadow detaches itself from the deep blue gloom. It hangs vertically in the water, motionless, a silent, ominous pole as long as a telephone pole. This is an orthocone, a type of nautiloid, and it is the new apex predator of this world. As it drifts closer, you see that its long, conical shell is divided into chambers and may have been patterned with stripes or bands. From the wide opening at the end, a squid-like head emerges, with large, complex eyes that fix upon a target. A nest of tentacles unfurls, ready to snatch an unsuspecting trilobite or a slow-moving fish from the water. Its sharp, parrot-like beak is hidden within. Some of these orthocones, like the colossal Endocerus, could grow to lengths of over 6 meters, or 20 feet. They were the first true giants of the animal kingdom, the largest and most formidable creatures on the entire planet. And they are not the only danger here. Scuttling out from a crevice in the reef is another nightmare creature, a eurypterid, or sea scorpion. It looks like a monstrous fusion of a scorpion and a lobster. Its body is encased in segmented armor. It has a pair of powerful grasping claws, several pairs of walking legs, and a pair of flattened paddle-like limbs for swimming. Its long, flexible abdomen ends in a sharp, spike-like telson. They are formidable hunters, the terrors of the shallow sea floor. These sea scorpions are an ancient and successful group, and they are the direct ancestors of all modern arachnids. Every spider in its web, every scorpion in the desert, is a distant descendant of these aquatic predators. In this new, more dangerous world, you look for our own relatives, the vertebrates. They are here, and they are becoming more common, but they are clearly not the ones in charge. You see them nosing through the sediment, the ostracoderms, the jawless fish. They have responded to the intense predation pressure in the only way they can, by turning themselves into tiny swimming fortresses. They are covered from head to tail in thick plates of bony armor. They are less like fish and more like swimming stones. This heavy shielding offers protection, but it also makes them slow and clumsy. They plod along the seafloor, using their small, jawless, sucker-like mouths to hoover up organic debris from the mud. You see a perfect example swim past, a creature called Sacabambaspis. It is about the size of your hand, shaped like a tadpole, with a massive, armored head, and no fins to speak of. Its most notable features are two large, forward-facing depressions for its eyes, making it look a bit like a cartoon car with headlights. Its mouth is permanently open in a slight frown. It's a slightly dopey, endearing look that has, 500 million years later, made this little armored fish an unlikely internet meme. It is the perpetually surprised-looking underdog of the Ordovician seas. The fossil record tells this story of predation with crystal clarity. The huge conical shells of the orthocones are found in Ordovician rocks all around the world, a testament to their global success as hunters. And the sheer abundance of fossilized armor plates from the ostracoderms tells the other side of the story. The fact that so many different types of early fish had to evolve such heavy, cumbersome armor is powerful, silent proof of the dangers they faced every single day. And yet, for all their success, the orthocones still present us with puzzles. How the giant orthocones controlled their buoyancy is still a matter of scientific modeling. Like their modern relative, the chambered nautilus, they almost certainly used gas-filled chambers within their long shells to achieve neutral buoyancy, allowing them to float motionless in the water. But managing this delicate balance in a long, straight, unwieldy shell instead of a compact spiral presents a unique set of physics challenges. How did they avoid tumbling end over end? How did they move with any grace? They were masters of their environment, but the secrets of their engineering are still being worked out. You are floating in the vibrant, bustling world of the late Ordovician. The complex reef cities are humming with life. The seas are patrolled by giant orthocones, and the seafloor is alive with trilobites and our own heavily armored, jawless ancestors. The system seems stable, mature, and endlessly prosperous. But you feel a deep and persistent chill begin to creep into the warm, tropical water. It's a cold that seems to be coming from the very bottom of the world. This is not a change of seasons. It is a change of ages, driven by a force that is slow, silent, and unstoppable. Far to the south, the massive supercontinent of Gondwana, a colossal landmass made of the fused pieces of modern South America, Africa, Australia, Antarctica, and India, has been slowly drifting for millions of years. Now, its journey has brought it to a fateful position, directly over the South Pole. Having a large continent sitting at a pole is a perfect recipe for an ice age. Snow begins to fall on the continent, and because of the polar location, it doesn't melt in the summer. Year after year, century after century, the snow accumulates, compressing under its own immense weight into glaciers. An ice sheet, miles thick, begins to grow, covering a continent in a white shroud. This glaciation unleashes a two-pronged attack on the world's ecosystems. The first is the cold itself. The warm, stable tropical seas that had nurtured life for tens of millions of years begin to cool dramatically. Organisms that are perfectly adapted to a specific temperature range suddenly find themselves in a hostile, frigid environment. They cannot adapt quickly enough. The second attack, however, is far more devastating. As water evaporates from the ocean and falls as snow to build the polar ice cap, it gets locked away on land. The oceans are being drained. You watch in slow motion as the sea level begins to fall, dropping by as much as 100 meters, or over 300 feet. The vast, shallow inland seas that covered the continents, the very cradle of the Ordovician boom, simply drain away. The bustling reef cities you just explored are left high and dry, their intricate structures exposed to the alien air. The countless creatures that lived in them are stranded, their world vanishing from beneath them. This is the Ordovician Silurian Extinction Event, the first of the planet's Big Five mass extinctions. The devastation is almost incomprehensible. An estimated 85% of all marine species are wiped from the face of the Earth. The delicate reef-building corals and sponges are all but annihilated. The rich communities of brachiopods and bryozoans are decimated. Many families of trilobites vanish forever. Floating in the water column, the graptolites, tiny colonial animals that were a key part of the plankton, die off in massive numbers. In terms of the sheer percentage of life that was lost, this is the second most severe mass extinction in the entire history of our planet. The evidence for this ancient catastrophe is written indelibly in the rock record. All around the world, geologists can point to a distinct line in Ordovician strata where there is clear evidence of a massive, rapid drop in sea level. Chemical signatures locked in the limestone, specifically the ratios of different oxygen isotopes, provide a clear thermometer reading, showing a sharp plunge in global temperatures. And the smoking gun, in the deserts of modern-day North Africa, in rocks of the correct age, we find the unmistakable scars and deposits left behind by advancing glaciers. Proof that this now scorching land was once at the frozen bottom of the world. While the glaciation is widely accepted as the primary cause, some scientists argue that a more dramatic, cosmic trigger may have been involved. They suggest that a gamma ray burst from a nearby supernova could have blasted our planet, stripping away the ozone layer. This would have allowed deadly ultraviolet radiation to rain down, killing off organisms living in the surface waters and potentially triggering the rapid global cooling. It's a spectacular and terrifying, if unlikely, alternative. To add a final cruel twist to the story, the extinction came in two distinct pulses. The first wave of death was caused by the glaciation starting, the world cooling, and the seas draining away. The species that survived were those that could adapt to the new, colder conditions in the smaller oceans. But then, in a geological flash, the Ice Age ended. The glaciers melted, and all that trapped water flooded back into the sea. The sea level shot back up, flooding the newly established coastlines with warm, oxygen-poor water. This was the second punch, wiping out many of the cold water survivors. Life was hit by the freezer, and then, just as it was getting used to the cold, it was hit by the flood. You witness the great thaw. The colossal ice sheets that smothered Gondwana begin to melt, releasing their frozen grip on the world. A torrent of fresh water pours back into the oceans, and the sea level, which had fallen so catastrophically, now rises again. The planet warms, and the survivors of the Great Extinction inherit a scoured, simplified, and profoundly changed world. You have entered the Silurian period. The first life to bounce back is what scientists call disaster taxa. These are the hardy generalists, the scrappy opportunists who can thrive in chaotic conditions. For a time, the seas are dominated by just a few species of brachiopods and trilobites. The complex ecosystems of the Ordovician are gone, replaced by a world of pioneers and squatters. But life is resilient. Slowly, gradually, complexity begins to return. You swim over the seafloor and see the reefs beginning to rebuild themselves. But the architects are different. New families of corals and sponges, the survivors of the freeze, are now laying the foundations. The trilobites and brachiopods are here too, but they never quite recover their former glory. They are a dynasty past their peak, survivors living in the shadow of a grander age. The world is healing, but the scars remain. The real action, the most significant innovation in this new Silurian world, is happening with your own distant relatives. The jawless, armored ostracoderms plod along the bottom as they always have. But you see something new swimming in the water column, something sleek and fast. It turns towards you, and you see the revolutionary feature that will change the future of the planet. It opens its mouth, and then it closes it. It has a jaw. This is the single greatest leap forward for vertebrates since the evolution of the notochord. In the fiercely competitive post-extinction world, this new weapon is a game changer. Two major groups of jawed fish now appear on the scene. The first are the plecoderms, or plate-skinned fish. They are still heavily armored like their jawless ancestors, but now that armor is paired with a powerful biting jaw. The second group is the acanthodians, or spiny sharks. They are generally smaller, more agile, and their bodies are covered in a different kind of defense. These acanthodians are a strange and wonderful sight. They are often called spiny sharks, but they aren't true sharks. They are their own unique experiment. Imagine a fish that looks like a swimming pincushion. In front of every single one of its fins, the dorsal, the pectoral, the pelvic, is a thick, sharp, rigid spine of bone. In a world still populated by giant sea scorpions and other predators, this was an excellent "do not eat me" signal. The advantage of a jaw is almost impossible to overstate. It transforms feeding from a passive act of sucking up mud or filtering water into an active, aggressive pursuit. With jaws, you can bite, you can grasp, you can tear. A whole new menu of food sources becomes available, from hard-shelled brachiopods that can now be crushed, to other faster-moving fish that can now be caught. Predation becomes a visceral, dynamic hunt. The evolution of jaws was one of the most significant steps in vertebrate history, the pivotal innovation that set the stage for the future success of all jawed vertebrates, from sharks and dinosaurs right up to you. The fossil evidence for this transformation is beautiful. Skulls of the earliest jawed fish show us exactly how it happened. Jaws didn't appear out of thin air. They were repurposed from an existing structure. All early fish had a series of bony or cartilaginous supports for their gills, called gill arches. The jaw is simply the result of the forward-most pair of these gill arches becoming enlarged, hinged, and equipped with teeth. It is a perfect example of evolution tinkering with the parts it already has to create something revolutionary and new. And yet, as with all great transitions, the fine details are still being debated by scientists. Whether placoderms or acanthodians represent the ancestral line to modern jawed vertebrates, including us, is a complex and evolving debate, with new fossils frequently redrawing the family tree. Are we descended from the heavily armored placoderms or the spiny, versatile acanthodians? The jury is still out. But what is certain is that here, in the quiet recovery of the Silurian seas, the vertebrate body plan was forged into the powerful, predatory form that would one day come to dominate the planet. While the drama of jaws and armor plays out in the recovering oceans, an even more profound revolution is beginning at the water's edge. You turn your gaze from the Silurian Sea to the land, a realm that has remained stubbornly, lifelessly barren for billions of years. For all of life's success in the water, this has been a frontier too far, and for good reason. The challenges here are immense. Out of the water, you are crushed by the full force of gravity. The air is a constant thief of moisture, threatening to dry you out. Reproduction is a puzzle when there's no water for your cells to swim through. And perhaps the biggest problem of all, how do you get nutrients from solid rock? But life is persistent. At the margins of a stream, clinging to the damp rocks in the splash zone, you see the first pioneers. A green, velvety fuzz of simple mosses and liverworts. They are the descendants of algae that made the leap, but they are still shackled to the water, able to survive only where it is constantly wet. They are a foothold, but not a conquest. You walk a little further inland, to a flat, marshy floodplain, and here you see the next great leap. Sticking up from the damp ground are dense thickets of small, green, stick-like plants. They are utterly simple, just smooth stems that branch out into a Y shape over and over, with tiny capsules at their tips. This is Cooksonia, one of the first vascular plants, and it is a revolutionary. It has solved one of the great challenges of life on land. The secret to its success is hidden inside its stem: vascular tissue. It has evolved the world's first plumbing. A set of tubes called xylem can pull water and nutrients up from the ground, defying gravity. Another set of tubes called phloem can send the sugars it produces through photosynthesis down to the parts of the plant that are not in the sun. This internal plumbing system is a game changer. It provides the structural support to stand up straight, and the transport network to live away from the immediate edge of the water. For the first time, life can put down roots, literally and figuratively. This is the very beginning of the greening of the continents. You are standing in one of Earth's first terrestrial ecosystems. It's not a forest. There are no mighty trees, no shady canopy. It's a strange, silent, alien landscape. Vast areas are still bare rock, but the low-lying, wetter areas are now covered in these low, green carpets and miniature forests of leafless, stick-like plants. You stand amongst them and listen. The only sound is the gentle sigh of the wind as it whistles through the millions of tiny green stems. There are no birds to sing, no insects to buzz, not even the rustle of leaves, because leaves have not yet been invented. It is a world of profound green silence. And yet this quiet, humble invasion will permanently change the face of the entire planet. The colonization of land by plants is one of the most significant events in Earth's history. Their primitive roots will begin to dig into the rock, breaking it down and trapping organic matter, creating the first true soils. And all the while, their relentless photosynthesis will continue to pump oxygen into the atmosphere, enriching it for the air-breathing life that is soon to follow. We can trace this green revolution in the geological record. Scientists find microscopic fossilized plant spores in rocks dating all the way back to the Ordovician, but the Silurian is when we find the first macroscopic fossils of the plants themselves, like the delicate carbonized stems of Cooksonia. We also see, for the first time, the appearance of paleosols, the preserved layers of ancient primitive soils being created by these first plants. But they may not have done it alone. The exact relationship between the first land plants and symbiotic fungi is a hot area of research. Many believe plants could not have colonized land without forming a partnership with fungi to help them extract nutrients from the primitive, rocky ground. Fungi are master chemists, capable of dissolving rock and pulling out vital minerals like phosphorus. The plants, in return, would have provided the fungi with sugars from photosynthesis. It was likely a team effort, a secret partnership that allowed life to finally conquer the continents. You are standing in the quiet, green world of the first land plants. For the moment, it is a silent stage, a kingdom of still green stems. But wherever a new source of energy appears on this planet, life will eventually find a way to exploit it. The thickets of primitive plants have created a new environment, a damp, shady undergrowth littered with a constantly accumulating supply of dead and decaying plant matter. For the first time, there is both food and shelter on land. The animals are coming. The first to arrive are the ones who are perfectly equipped for the challenge, the arthropods. In a way, they have been pre-adapted for this moment by their life in the sea. Their tough exoskeleton, which served as armor against marine predators, is also a fantastic waterproof suit that prevents them from drying out in the open air. It provides the rigid support they need to hold their bodies up against the full force of gravity, and their multiple jointed legs are already perfect for walking. They don't need to evolve limbs from scratch, they just need to step out of the water. You kneel down and peer into the damp, miniature jungle beneath a thicket of Cooksonia. The silence is broken. You see movement. A worm-like creature with dozens of legs, an early millipede, is slowly chewing on a piece of decaying stem. It is one of the world's first terrestrial herbivores. A moment later, a flatter, faster centipede-like animal darts out from under a rock, hunting for even smaller prey. And then you see it, a Trigonotarbid, an extinct type of arachnid that looks like a heavily armored spider, picking its way through the debris. Nearby, a scorpion, looking uncannily like its modern descendants, scuttles for cover. You are witnessing the birth of the very first ecosystem on land. It is a simple food web built from the ground up. The plants form the foundation. The decaying plant matter, or detritus, is the primary food source. The first herbivores, like the millipedes, are the consumers. And the first predators, the centipedes and arachnids, are here to hunt them. It is a world of small things, a secret, busy community thriving in the damp shadows, but it is a complete and functioning world nonetheless. These arthropod pioneers were, officially, the first animals to breathe air. We know this because astonishingly well-preserved fossils from the Silurian show the presence of spiracles, the small openings on the sides of their bodies that lead to the network of tubes they use for respiration. They had solved the puzzle of pulling oxygen directly from the atmosphere. Our most perfect window into this lost world comes from a fossil site in Scotland called the Rhynie Chert. It is a prehistoric Pompeii for this early terrestrial ecosystem. Around 410 million years ago, a hot spring, rich in silica, erupted and flooded a nearby marsh. The silica-rich water petrified everything it touched instantly, preserving the entire community in 3 dimensions with microscopic cellular detail. In the Rhynie Chert, we see the simple leafless plants. We see the arachnids and the centipede-like hunters. And we even have the fossil of the oldest known insect, a creature called Rhyniognatha. It is a perfect frozen snapshot that confirms all of these creatures were living together, weaving the first fragile threads of a terrestrial food web. Still, the exact path these pioneers took to get here is a little hazy. Whether the first land arthropods evolved from marine or freshwater ancestors is still debated. Did they crawl directly out of the salty ocean? A truly shocking change of environment? Or did they first adapt to freshwater rivers and lakes, making the eventual transition to dry land a much smaller and more gradual step? The tracks are faint, and scientists are still following them back in time. Perhaps the most fascinating of these early invaders were the scorpions. Some of the very first ones seem to have been hedging their evolutionary bets. Their fossils show that they possessed not only book lungs for breathing air, but also a set of primitive gills. They were amphibious. They could breathe in the water and on the land, keeping a foot, or perhaps a claw, in both worlds. They were pioneers, but cautious ones, not quite ready to burn the bridges that connected them to their ancient, watery home. You leave the quiet, damp world of the first terrestrial pioneers and dive back beneath the waves. The Silurian recovery has given way to a new, ferocious chapter in Earth's history, the Devonian period. On land, life is still small, experimental, and clinging to the water's edge. But in the oceans, the arms race that began with the jaw has escalated into a global conflict. This is, without question, the age of fishes. The jawed fish have exploded in diversity, filling every conceivable niche and growing to sizes previously unimaginable. The placoderms, the armored fish, are now the undisputed rulers of the seas. And you see their king emerge from the murky depths. It is a creature of pure, brutal power. It is Dunkleosteus. It approaches you, and its scale is breathtaking. It can grow up to 8 meters long, the size of a modern orca. The entire front third of its body, its head and shoulders, is encased in a thick, interlocking fortress of bony armor. It is a living battering ram, but its most terrifying feature is its mouth. Dunkleosteus does not have teeth. It has something far worse. The bones of its jaw itself are honed into massive, shearing blades. When its mouth closes, these upper and lower bone plates slide past each other, creating a self-sharpening, guillotine-like beak. It is a mouth designed to slice through the thickest armor of other fish, as if it were tinfoil. The biomechanical models of this creature's jaw are the stuff of nightmares. Scientists have calculated that its bite had the force of 8,000 pounds per square inch, making it one of the most powerful bites of any animal ever. And even more surprisingly, we have found placoderm fossils with embryos inside them, meaning these armored giants were engaging in internal fertilization and giving birth to live young, a remarkably advanced reproductive strategy for such an early vertebrate. But for all its ferocity, there's a comical secret to this monster. You'll notice that in every museum and every illustration, you only ever see the front, armored half of Dunkleosteus. That's because it's all we have. The back 2/3 of the fish was likely made of unarmored cartilage, which rarely fossilizes. We have to guess what the rest of its body looked like. It was, as the saying goes, all business in the front and a party in the back. The Devonian Sea is a dangerous place. Alongside the placoderms, the first true sharks now patrol the waters. Sleek, fast, and cartilaginous. A different, more lightweight model of predator. The bony fish have also flourished, splitting into the two great lineages that still exist today. There are the ray-finned fish, whose descendants make up nearly all the fish species on Earth now. And then there is a rarer, quieter group, the lobe-finned fish. They are not as spectacular, but their fleshy, bone-supported fins are a design that will have profound consequences for the future of the planet. These fish also mark another crucial milestone. Placoderms were the first vertebrates to develop pelvic fins, the bony equivalent of our own hind legs. This was a critical step in establishing the four-limbed body plan that would eventually be needed to walk on land. In the waters around the reefs, the coiled shells of ammonites are now a common sight, bobbing in the currents. But this world of armored titans is not destined to last. Why the placoderms went extinct at the end of the Devonian while sharks and bony fish survived is a major mystery. Their heavy armor, which had been their greatest asset, may have ultimately become their undoing. In a changing world, perhaps they were too specialized, too slow, and too invested in a single strategy, while the lighter, more adaptable sharks and bony fish were better equipped to weather the coming storm. For now, however, they are the undisputed masters of the sea, a dynasty of armored giants ruling a violent, beautiful, and vibrant ocean kingdom. You leave the terrifying open waters of the Devonian Ocean and return to the shore. The quiet revolution you saw beginning here has erupted into a full-scale conquest. The small, tentative, stick-like plants have grown up. Thanks to the evolution of lignin, the strong, rigid polymer that makes up wood, and the invention of broad, flat leaves to capture more sunlight, plants have become trees. You are now walking through the world's first forests. This is not a forest you would recognize. The air is thick, heavy, and humid, filled with the smell of damp earth and decaying vegetation. The dominant trees are bizarre. You see giant club mosses and horsetails, which are today small, humble plants, but here they tower dozens of feet into the air. The most advanced tree is a creature called Archaeopteris. It has a solid, woody trunk like a pine tree, but its branches are festooned with delicate green fronds that make it look like a giant fern. For the first time, the land has a canopy, a world of shade and dappled light, of complex, multi-layered habitats. These new forests are not just a backdrop. They are planetary engineers, fundamentally altering the globe. Their deep, powerful roots dig into the bedrock, breaking it apart and dramatically accelerating the creation of deep, rich soil. As they spread across the continents, these photosynthesizing giants are pulling colossal amounts of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, which may be starting to cause a slow, steady global cooling. And as their leaves and branches fall, they choke the rivers and streams, clogging them with organic debris and turning them into dark, stagnant, low-oxygen swamps. It is in one of these murky, shallow, plant-choked swamps that you witness the next great evolutionary leap. You peer into the brown water and see a fish. But it's not a placoderm or a shark. It is a lobe-finned fish. You look closely at its fins. They are not thin, bony rays like a normal fish fin. They are fleshy, muscular lobes, and hidden inside is a secret that will change the world. The bones within that fin are arranged in a distinct pattern. One large bone connected to two smaller bones, which then connect to a series of even smaller bones. It is the exact same pattern as the bones in your own arm. At the water's edge, half submerged in the mud, you see the hero of this story. The creature is about a meter long. It is clearly a fish. It is covered in scales. It has gills. And it has fins. But it is also something more. Its head is not fish-like at all. It is wide, flat, and triangular, like a crocodile's. Its eyes are not on the sides of its head, but on top, perfect for peeking above the water's surface. And most importantly, you watch as it moves its front fins. It props its body up, pushing its head out of the water. Inside that fin is a mobile wrist joint and small bones that are the clear precursors to fingers. This creature, Tiktaalik, is a fish that can do a push-up. It is the perfect bridge between a life in the water and a life on land. Why would a fish evolve to do this? In these choked, stagnant swamps, the water is warm and holds very little oxygen. The ability to push your head into the air, to gulp a breath, is a massive survival advantage. The shallow, tangled waterways also provide a perfect refuge from the giant predators, like Dunkleosteus, that patrol the deeper, open channels. And in a world with seasonal droughts, the ability to haul your body out of a drying pond and flop your way to a deeper one is the difference between life and death. Tiktaalik is a classic transitional fossil, a beautiful mosaic creature that perfectly captures a moment of evolutionary change. Its discovery in the Canadian Arctic was a triumph of scientific prediction. Paleontologists reasoned that if they looked in rocks of exactly the right age, from exactly the right environment, a subtropical river delta, they ought to find this missing link. And after years of searching, they did. And in a wonderful tribute to the place it was found, its name isn't Greek or Latin. Tiktaalik is an Inuktitut word, suggested by the Inuit elders of the territory, meaning large freshwater fish. Of course, scientists debate the exact pressures that drove the move to land. Was it to escape predators? To find new food sources like the arthropods already on land? Or to move between drying pools of water? The answer is likely a combination of all three. But whatever the reason, the first tentative steps have been taken. Fins are becoming feet. You are watching the descendants of Tiktaalik take their first clumsy steps on the muddy shores of the Devonian. The land is green with the first forests, and the oceans are a glittering, dangerous realm ruled by armored fish. It is a world at the peak of its creative power. But a sickness is beginning to creep into the planetary system. The very success of life on land is about to poison the seas that gave it birth. The Devonian world is headed for another great calamity. This is not a sudden, violent blow like the Ordovician Ice Age. The late Devonian extinction is a long, drawn-out crisis, a planetary illness that lasts for millions of years and comes in a series of devastating pulses. You feel it as a change in the water quality. The clear tropical seas begin to cloud over, choked with a thick, green soup. The victims of this plague are almost entirely marine. You watch as the great reef systems, those bustling underwater cities, begin to wither and die, their builders suffocated in the murky water. The mighty plecoderms, the armored tyrants of the sea, are hit hardest of all. The magnificent Dunkleosteus and all its kin are completely wiped out, their entire branch on the tree of life chopped off forever. The hardy trilobites, who have already survived one great extinction, suffer terrible losses. So do the brachiopods and the ammonites. The world's oceans are being emptied. The cause of this crisis is a tragic irony. The leading suspect is not a rock from space or a blast of ice, but the beautiful, thriving forests you just explored on the continents. The chain reaction is simple and devastating. The deep, powerful roots of the new trees are breaking up rocks and creating massive volumes of soil. When it rains, this new, nutrient-rich soil erodes and is washed into the rivers, and from there, out into the oceans. This sudden, massive influx of nutrients, a planetary-scale fertilizer dump, triggers explosive, runaway blooms of algae. The surface of the ocean becomes a thick, green sludge. When these countless trillions of algae complete their short life cycle, they die and sink into the depths. There, they are decomposed by bacteria. And this is the kill mechanism. The process of bacterial decomposition consumes enormous amounts of dissolved oxygen. The oceans begin to suffocate. Vast, stagnant, oxygen-starved dead zones spread across the globe, and any creature that cannot flee to the shallows simply perishes. The evidence for this ancient suffocation is written in dark, greasy layers in the rock record. All around the world, the geological strata from this time contain thick deposits of black shale. This black color is the telltale signature of an anoxic, or oxygen-free environment. It comes from all the dead organic matter, the algae, that settled on the seafloor but couldn't fully decay because there was no oxygen. It is the geological tombstone of a dead ocean. Chemical analysis of these shales also reveals spikes in phosphorus and other nutrients consistent with massive runoff from soils on land. The effect was catastrophic. The extinction was so severe that it took tens of millions of years for new, complex reef systems to evolve and take their place. For a vast stretch of time, the world's oceans were ecologically simplified, a shadow of their former glory. While the land-plant hypothesis is the leading theory, other contributing factors are also proposed, including a series of large volcanic eruptions that could have altered the climate and even the after-effects of an asteroid impact. A large crater in modern-day Sweden, the Siljan Ring, dates to this time, though its global impact is debated. But here is the final, strange twist in the story. While the marine world was in a death spiral, life on land was doing surprisingly well. The plants, the arthropods, and the very first true tetrapods, the earliest amphibians that were now walking on sturdy legs, were much less affected by the crisis in the seas. Life's new foothold on the continents, the very cause of the disaster, was also its safest harbor. The land had been conquered, and its new inhabitants were here to stay, survivors of a planetary crisis that they themselves had unwittingly caused. You emerge from the turmoil of the Devonian extinction into a new world. The survivors on land find themselves in an age of incredible abundance. This is the Carboniferous period, a name that means coal-bearing, a hint of the immense biological productivity that will define this era. But the most important feature of this world isn't the life. Not at first. It's the air itself. You take a breath, and the atmosphere feels thick, heavy, and strangely energizing. The vast forests that inadvertently triggered the last extinction are now more widespread and vigorous than ever before, sprawling across the warm, wet, equatorial regions of the globe. Photosynthesis is happening on a scale the planet has never seen. These endless swamps are acting as a colossal, planetary-scale oxygen factory, pumping the atmosphere full of the gas. You are standing in a world where the oxygen level climbs from around 15% to a staggering 35%, far beyond the 21% you are used to. It is a hyper-oxygenated age. This profoundly different atmosphere has two dramatic and dangerous consequences. The first is that it allows for giants. Specifically, giant insects and other arthropods. Arthropods, like insects and millipedes, don't have lungs like you do. They breathe through a network of tiny tubes called tracheae that run through their bodies. Oxygen has to diffuse passively down these tubes to reach their tissues. In our modern 21% oxygen world, this system is inefficient, and the length of the tubes puts a hard limit on how large an arthropod can get. But in the oxygen-rich air of the Carboniferous, oxygen diffuses much more easily and penetrates deeper down the tubes. This removes the size constraint, opening the evolutionary door for the monstrous bugs that are to come. The second consequence is fire. An atmosphere with 35% oxygen is incredibly flammable. The air itself is almost an accelerant. You can smell the sharp tang of ozone from frequent lightning strikes. A single spark from one of these strikes wouldn't just start a fire, it would ignite an inferno. Even damp green vegetation could catch a blaze, and wildfires would have raged across the landscape with a terrifying speed and intensity that is hard to comprehend. The world is a global tinderbox, constantly burning and regrowing. And we have direct, physical evidence for this strange atmosphere. Incredibly, scientists have found tiny, perfect bubbles of carboniferous air trapped and preserved in ancient amber. When they analyze the gas in these 500 million-year-old bubbles, they confirm the incredibly high oxygen levels. The other line of evidence is the rock itself. Carboniferous strata all over the world are packed with thick layers of charcoal, the telltale signature of constant, widespread, and ferocious wildfires. If you could stand here for long, you would feel the strange effects of this air. The high oxygen would supercharge your metabolism. You'd feel incredibly energetic, able to run for longer without getting tired. But it's a dangerous cocktail. High concentrations of oxygen are ultimately toxic, and they accelerate the process of oxidation, which is to say, decay. Wounds would get infected more easily, and some scientists speculate that even the process of aging might have been faster. It is a world of high energy, but also of rapid burnout. This oxygen-rich air is only one half of a profound change. The plants are breathing in carbon dioxide and breathing out oxygen. All the dead plant matter falling into the swamps isn't rotting and releasing its carbon back into the atmosphere. It's being buried and slowly compressed into the vast coal seams that give the period its name. This process acts like a giant carbon capture system. With so much of the greenhouse gas CO2 being pulled out of the atmosphere and locked away underground, the planet's thermostat begins to turn down, eventually leading to a period of global cooling and another ice age later in the Carboniferous. But how did the vertebrates, the amphibians and early reptiles, cope with this atmosphere? Scientists debate the exact physiological effects of hyperoxia on vertebrates. Did it allow for more energetic metabolisms, fueling more active lifestyles? Or did it also pose serious risks, like oxygen toxicity, which their bodies had to evolve ways to mitigate? The air was a source of both incredible energy and incredible danger, a defining paradox of this strange and volatile time. You step from the open air into the deep, humid gloom of the Great Carboniferous Swamp. The thick, oxygen-rich atmosphere you were breathing was manufactured right here. You are now standing in the engine room of the Carboniferous world, an ecosystem utterly alien to anything on Earth today. The air is still, heavy, and smells of decay and damp vegetation. The light is dim, filtered through a high, dense canopy. The water at your feet is dark and still, stained the color of tea by the tannins leaching from countless fallen logs. The trees are the most striking feature. They are not the familiar oaks or pines of a modern forest. Towering above you are the colossal scale trees, a type of giant club moss called lepidodendron. They shoot straight up into the sky like enormous green pillars, reaching heights of over 40 meters, or 130 feet. Their trunks rarely branch until the very top, where they split into a crown of leafy fronds. The bark is covered in a beautiful and distinctive diamond-shaped pattern, the scars left behind where leaves were once attached. These were the weeds of the Carboniferous, growing incredibly fast and living for only a decade or two before crashing back down into the swamp. Filling the space between them are other strange giants. You see thickets of calamites, a type of horsetail that grew to the size of a modern tree, its jointed, bamboo-like trunk reaching for the light. The understory is a tangled, almost impenetrable mass of sprawling seed ferns, their large, complex fronds creating a world of deep, green shadow. You notice something strange about this forest. There is dead wood everywhere. Fallen logs lie half-submerged in the dark water, piled on top of each other in a chaotic jumble. And yet they aren't rotting away in the way you'd expect. This is the secret of the Carboniferous, the reason this period would one day fuel the furnaces of human industry. These first trees had evolved lignin, the tough polymer that makes wood woody and strong. But the microbes, the bacteria and fungi that specialize in breaking down lignin, had not yet evolved the complex chemical toolkit to do it efficiently. So, when a giant lepidodendron died and fell, it didn't fully decompose. It simply fell into the stagnant, oxygen-poor water of the swamp, where it was pickled and preserved. Year after year, century after century, the layers of dead wood and plant matter piled up, compressing under their own weight, forming thick mats of peat. Over millions of years, as these layers were buried deeper by sediment, the heat and pressure of the earth cooked this peat, driving off the water and concentrating the carbon, transforming it into the vast black seams of coal we mine today. The fossil record of these forests is absolutely spectacular. In coal mines around the world, we find entire fossilized tree stumps, still in their upright growth positions, their strange roots spreading out into the fossilized soil. The layers of shale and rock between the coal seams are like pages in a book, covered in the delicate, perfect impressions of fern fronds and the distinctive scaly bark patterns of the scale trees. One of the most common fossils found in these rocks was, for a long time, a complete mystery. It was a long, branching fossil with circular pits on it, and it was given the name Stigmaria. Scientists had no idea what kind of plant it was, until one day they finally found a Stigmaria still attached to the base of a lepidodendron trunk. They were its roots. These giant trees had a strange, shallow, forking root system, perfectly adapted for anchoring them in the soft, swampy ground. It is a strange and humbling thought to stand here, in this gloomy, primordial swamp, and realize the connection to your own time. The majority of the coal that powered the Industrial Revolution, that built the modern world, and that we continue to burn for energy today, was formed right here. Every lump of coal is a piece of a lepidodendron or a calamites, a fossilized remnant of this alien forest. You are standing in a world that is, in a very real sense, a buried sunbeam, its ancient captured sunlight waiting 300 million years to be released. And while these equatorial swamps are the most famous, just how widespread these swamp forests were is a topic of study. Were they confined to these wetlands, or did different types of forests extend into the more temperate, drier regions of the world? The map of this ancient green planet is still being drawn. You are standing in the deep, humid silence of the great coal forest. But the silence is deceptive. A low, droning hum begins to fill the heavy air, growing louder and closer. It's the sound of beating wings, but deeper and more powerful than any insect you have ever heard. You look up through a gap in the canopy and see it. Soaring through the air is Meganeura, a griffinfly, a close relative of a dragonfly, but scaled up to nightmarish proportions. Its wingspan stretches nearly 75 centimeters, or 2.5 feet across, the size of a modern seagull. Its iridescent cellophane-like wings catch the dim light as it swoops through the trees, hunting for smaller insects, or perhaps even small amphibians. It is the largest flying insect of all time, the king of the carboniferous skies. A loud rustling in the dense undergrowth nearby pulls your attention back to the ground. Something very large is pushing its way through the giant ferns. It's not a vertebrate. It is a long, segmented, armored body, flowing over the fallen logs like a freight train. This is Arthropleura, a colossal millipede, the largest land invertebrate to have ever lived. It can grow up to 2.5 meters, or 8 feet, long, with a flattened, ribbed body as wide as a car tire. You watch, frozen, as this behemoth passes by. Despite its intimidating size, it was likely a gentle giant, a herbivore or detritivore, using its immense power to bulldoze through the forest floor, munching on decaying plant matter. This is the reign of the megabugs. The combination of the sprawling forest habitats and the super-oxygenated atmosphere has allowed the arthropods to achieve sizes they will never reach again. And it isn't just a few freakish examples. Gigantism is the rule, not the exception. Scorpions, like the fearsome Pulmonoscorpius, scuttle through the leaf litter, growing to over 2 feet long. The ancestors of spiders spin their webs, much larger than their modern kin. And yes, the cockroaches are here too. Early roaches are common in the fossil record of these swamps, and they are big. Imagine seeing a familiar, unwelcome pest scuttling out from under a log, only it's the size of your forearm. You close your eyes and just listen. The air is not silent. It is filled with the deep, resonant hum of giant wings, the incessant clicking and clattering of thousands of armored legs on the damp ground, the loud crunching of giant mandibles, and the heavy rustle of immense, segmented bodies forcing their way through the foliage. It is the unnerving alien orchestra of the Carboniferous, an entire world dominated by creatures that today are small enough to land on your hand. While you stand here, surrounded by these giant, intimidating bugs, it's worth remembering that the first true dinosaurs are still almost 100 million years in the future. This is a completely different lost world, one that belonged to the arthropods. The fossils of these giants are often rare and fragmentary, as their exoskeletons disarticulate and decay much more easily than bone. But the fossils we do have are spectacular, and sometimes the evidence isn't the body itself, but the traces it left behind. The most incredible proof we have for the immense size of Arthropleura comes from its fossilized trackways. Preserved in ancient sandstone, We have found long parallel lines of its footprints, some of them half a meter wide, showing us not just how large it was, but exactly how it moved through its swampy home. But what allowed them to get so big? While high oxygen is the leading theory for insect gigantism, another factor could be the absence of effective aerial predators. The first flying vertebrates, the pterosaurs, had not yet evolved. The skies were a relatively safe space. There was nothing up there that could effectively hunt a giant, and perhaps clumsy flyer like Meganeura. Without that pressure, the insects were free to push the very limits of what was possible for their body plan. While the giant arthropods patrol the forest floor and the humid air, the vertebrates are carving out their own empire in the waterways. You move to the edge of a dark, swampy lagoon. The descendants of the first tetrapods have flourished here, diversifying into a great dynasty of amphibians. They are the undisputed rulers of the Carboniferous wetlands. You see their variety all around you. Small, salamander-like creatures hunt for insects in the shallows, but lurking in the deeper water are the true masters of this domain. A pair of eyes breaks the surface, followed by a wide, flat skull full of needle-sharp teeth. This is Eriops, a large, heavily built amphibian predator nearly 2 meters long. With a powerful muscular body and a tail like a crocodile's, it is the apex predator of the swamp's aquatic food web, waiting patiently for a fish or an unwary land dweller to come within reach of its formidable jaws. The amphibians are perfectly adapted to this wet world, but their mastery comes with a catch. They are prisoners of the swamp. Their skin is permeable and must be kept moist to prevent them from drying out. And more importantly, they are still chained to the water by the demands of reproduction. Their eggs are soft, jelly-coated spheres, lacking any protective shell. They must be laid in the water or in a very damp place, otherwise they will shrivel up and die. The swamp is their cradle, their fortress, and their prison, a boundary they can never truly leave. But as you watch the lumbering Eriops sink back beneath the surface, a small, agile creature scurries past you on the relatively dry ground a few feet away from the water's edge. It looks like a lizard. It is a new kind of animal, a quiet revolutionary. Its great innovation is not in its size or its strength, but in the way it brings new life into the world. This is one of the first true reptiles. Its secret is the amniotic egg. You can imagine it digging a small nest in the damp earth and laying a clutch of small, leathery shelled eggs. Each egg is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. It is a self-contained life support system, a private, portable pond for a developing embryo. A tough outer shell protects it from drying out and from physical damage. Inside, a large, rich yolk provides all the necessary food. And a series of complex membranes, including the amnion, surround the embryo in a stable, watery environment, while another membrane handles waste disposal. This is one of the most important inventions in the history of life. The evolution of the amniotic egg frees vertebrates from their dependence on water for reproduction. For the first time, they can lay their eggs on dry land. The chains are broken. This single adaptation opens up the vast, drier interiors of the continents, territories the amphibians could never hope to conquer. The reptiles are about to inherit the earth. You are looking at a pioneer like Hylonymus, a small, unassuming creature, but one that carries the future within its genes. Our best fossils of these first reptilian explorers come from a remarkable discovery in Nova Scotia. They were found perfectly preserved inside the hollowed-out, fossilized stumps of the giant scale trees. The prevailing theory is that the little reptiles were using the stumps as dens or shelters, or perhaps fell in and became trapped, which led to their exquisite preservation. All reptiles, all birds, and all mammals, including us, are amniotes, the descendants of these first creatures who learned how to package their own private pond and carry it with them onto dry land. The exact line between the most advanced amphibians, sometimes called reptiliomorphs, and the very first true reptiles is blurry in the fossil record, making it hard to pinpoint the precise moment the first amniotic egg was laid. But somewhere in these swamps, the transition was made. And at the same time, another crucial split was taking place, a division within the amniotes that would define the next 300 million years of vertebrate history. It all comes down to the number of holes in the skull behind the eye socket, which allow for the attachment of stronger jaw muscles. One hole means you are a synapsid, the lineage that will eventually lead to mammals. 2 holes means you are a diapsid, on the path to lizards, snakes, crocodiles, and dinosaurs. You, listening to this right now, are a synapsid. Your own deep ancestry is being forged right here in the shadows of the great coal forests. You feel a deep, slow shudder in the ground beneath you, a vibration that seems to go on for centuries. The world is changing its very shape. You have moved out of the Carboniferous and into the dawn of a new, harsher age, the Permian. For millions of years, the great tectonic plates of the Earth's crust have been drifting towards one another. Now, in a slow-motion collision of unimaginable force, they are crashing together. Great mountain ranges, the ancestors of the Appalachian and the Urals, are being crumpled and pushed up into the sky as continents grind against continents. When the dust settles, the world is unrecognizable. The scattered lands and separate continents are gone. In their place is a single colossal landmass that stretches from the South Pole to the North Pole. This is the supercontinent Pangaea. It is a vast, sea-shaped world, a lonely island of rock in the middle of a single, planet-spanning ocean known as the Panthalassic Ocean. The creation of this supercontinent has a catastrophic effect on the global climate. With most of the land now locked away in the interior, hundreds or even thousands of miles from the coast, the moderating, moisture-giving influence of the ocean is lost. The heart of Pangaea becomes a desert of epic proportions, a region of extreme temperatures that is brutally hot in the summer and punishingly cold in the winter. The world is no longer a humid greenhouse. It is a world of stark contrasts governed by a new and violent weather pattern, the mega monsoon. Along the vast single coastline, the year is divided into 2 seasons, a season of bone-dry drought and a season of torrential flooding rains. This new, drier world is a death sentence for the old way of life. The great humid coal swamps of the Carboniferous shrink and wither away, unable to survive the long, dry seasons. For the amphibians, who must keep their skin moist and lay their eggs in water, this is a disaster. Their empire crumbles. But for the new pioneers, the reptiles, this harsh world is a land of immense opportunity. Their waterproof, scaly skin protects them from drying out, and their revolutionary amniotic egg allows them to reproduce far from any pond or swamp. They are perfectly equipped to conquer these new, challenging landscapes. How can we be so sure that this giant continent existed? The evidence is locked in the rocks themselves. Geologists can map the ancient positions of the continents using a technique called paleomagnetism. When molten volcanic rocks cool and solidify, tiny magnetic minerals within them align themselves with the Earth's magnetic field, like trillions of microscopic compass needles. They become frozen in place, recording the direction of the magnetic pole at that exact moment in time. By reading these fossil compasses in rocks of the same age from every continent, scientists can rewind the clock, moving the plates back to the position they were in when the rocks formed, and watch as they all lock together perfectly into the shape of Pangaea. We also find vast cross-bedded sandstones from this period, the petrified remains of ancient sand dunes, and thick salt deposits left behind by evaporated inland seas, the unmistakable fingerprints of a hot, arid climate. The formation of a supercontinent also had a huge impact on life in the sea. As the land masses collided, thousands of miles of productive coastline and the shallow seas that sat on the continental shelves were simply eliminated, crushed out of existence. This dramatic reduction in marine habitat likely triggered a significant extinction event in the oceans. It's an almost impossible geography to imagine, but you can make it feel real. If you were to stand on a beach on the east coast of what is now North America, you would not be looking out at the vast Atlantic Ocean. You would be looking at the newly formed and towering Appalachian mountain range. And if you could climb to the top of those mountains and look east, you would see the great deserts of what is now North Africa. Climate modelers still work to understand the exact atmospheric and oceanic circulation patterns of Pangaea. How did the monsoons work on such a colossal scale? How did ocean currents distribute heat around the single giant ocean? It is a puzzle of immense complexity, a lost world whose weather we are still trying to reconstruct. You look out across the vast, semi-arid landscape of early Permian Pangaea. The world is harsh and challenging, a place of seasonal extremes. In this new world, a new group of animals has risen to become the dominant force on land, and they are not the reptiles you might expect. They are, in fact, our own distant relatives. This is the age of the synapsids. These creatures are often called mammal-like reptiles, but that name is misleading. They were not reptiles at all. They represent a completely separate branch of the amniote family tree, the one that would, after hundreds of millions of years of twists and turns, eventually lead to mammals and to you. In the Permian, it was our lineage that ruled the earth. You see the most famous of their kind basking in the cool morning sun. It is a Dimetrodon. It is a formidable predator, 4 meters long, with a powerful sprawling body and a large head full of sharp, differentiated teeth. But its most spectacular feature is the enormous circular sail rising from its back, a fan of skin supported by long, bony spines. It is an iconic image of the prehistoric world. But it is an image that comes with 2 very common misconceptions. The first is that Dimetrodon was a dinosaur. It was not. This is one of the most frequently misplaced animals in popular culture. It is almost guaranteed to be in any plastic bag of assorted dinosaur toys, a lonely ambassador from a lost world. But Dimetrodon and its kin went extinct some 40 million years before the first dinosaurs ever appeared. It is more closely related to you than it is to a Tyrannosaurus rex. The second myth concerns its magnificent sail. It was almost certainly not for defense or camouflage. Instead, it was likely a sophisticated piece of thermal regulation equipment. In the cool desert mornings, Dimetrodon could turn its sail towards the rising sun, using the huge surface area to absorb heat and warm its blood, far faster than its cold-blooded prey. It could get a vital head start on the day, becoming an active hunter while other animals were still sluggish and cold. In the heat of the afternoon, it could turn its sail away from the sun and use it to radiate excess heat away. The world of the Permian was filled with these strange synapsids. you see another sail-backed creature, Edaphosaurus, a plant eater, grazing on the tough, fibrous vegetation. Elsewhere, you see lumbering, heavily built herbivores called paraeosaurs, like the knobbly-skinned Scutosaurus, their bodies wrapped in bony armor plates. As you move forward through the millions of years of the Permian, the fauna changes. The early synapsids like Dimetrodon are replaced by a more advanced group called the therapsids. These creatures are even more mammal-like. You see the apex predators of the late Permian, the terrifying Gorgonopsians. They are fast, powerful hunters, the first creatures on Earth to evolve long, saber-like canine teeth. You also see the dominant herbivores of their time, the Dicynodonts, stout, barrel-bodied creatures with turtle-like beaks and a pair of prominent tusks. These therapsids show key mammal-like traits. Their legs are positioned more directly under their bodies for more efficient movement, and their teeth are clearly specialized for different jobs: incisors for nipping, canines for stabbing, and molars for chewing. For the vast majority of the Permian period, these synapsids, our ancient cousins, were the dominant large animals on the planet. This was our family's first great dynasty. Our best window into their world comes from the Karoo Basin in South Africa. The thick layers of rock there provide one of the most complete records of terrestrial life ever found, showing a clear succession of different synapsid-dominated ecosystems over millions of years. And as you look at these active, dynamic therapsids, a key question arises. Whether therapsids like the Gorgonopsians were warm-blooded or endothermic, like modern mammals, is a major debate among paleontologists. Their upright posture and their active predatory lifestyle certainly suggest they had a higher metabolism than a typical reptile. But the hard evidence, like the presence of fossilized hair or the complex nasal bones associated with preventing water loss in warm-blooded creatures, is so far missing. They were clearly on the road to becoming mammals, but how far they had traveled is still a mystery. You are standing in the late Permian, a world ruled by your own synapsid relatives. The Gorgonopsians are the top predators. The Dicynodonts are the most successful herbivores. For a brief, shining moment, our branch of the Tree of Life is on top of the world, but you feel a deep, persistent tremor in the ground. The air grows hazy, and you can taste a faint, acrid tang of sulfur on the wind. The planet itself is becoming sick, and it is about to unleash the single greatest catastrophe in the history of complex life. Far to the north of Pangaea, in the heart of the landmass that will one day become Siberia, the crust of the Earth rips open. This is not a single conical volcano. This is a vast fissure, a wound in the planet's skin from which lava begins to pour out. It is not a brief, violent explosion, but a relentless million-year-long flood of molten rock that will ultimately cover an area the size of Western Europe in a layer of basalt thousands of feet thick. This is the formation of the Siberian Traps, and it is the trigger for a perfect storm of planetary destruction. The lava itself is not the main killer. It is the gases belched out from the planet's interior in unimaginable quantities. First, there is the carbon dioxide and methane, greenhouse gases that cause runaway global warming. The global temperature soars, turning the already arid world into a planetary furnace. Then comes the sulfur dioxide, which mixes with the atmosphere to create powerful, corrosive acid rain. You watch as the rain falls, scorching the leaves of the forests, poisoning the soils, and turning the freshwater rivers and lakes acidic. The ocean, once a cradle of life, become a toxic, suffocating trap. As they warm up, they can no longer hold dissolved oxygen, and marine life begins to suffocate. At the same time, The vast amounts of CO2 dissolving in the water turn it acidic, causing the calcium carbonate shells of countless marine organisms to literally dissolve. The very water is now a corrosive poison. To complete the apocalypse, the volcanic gases may have also ripped apart the Earth's ozone layer, allowing deadly ultraviolet radiation from the sun to beat down upon the already stressed and dying life below. This is the Permian-Triassic Extinction Event. It is known simply as the Great Dying. The forests wither under the acid rain. The oceans become a stagnant, bubbling, toxic soup. Life is being systematically extinguished on a scale that is difficult to comprehend. The final, horrifying numbers are a testament to its severity. An estimated 96% of all marine species and 70% of all terrestrial vertebrate species are wiped from existence. The trilobites, who had survived for 270 million years through 2 previous mass extinctions, are finally gone forever. The great empires of our synapsid cousins are utterly shattered. Life on Earth is pushed to the very brink of total annihilation. To put this in perspective, every single living thing on our planet today, every plant, every animal, every fungus, including you, is descended from the meager 4% of species that somehow managed to cling to life through this global cataclysm. We are all the children of this apocalypse. The evidence for this volcanic Armageddon is undeniable. Geologists have been able to date the lava flows of the Siberian traps with incredible precision, and they line up perfectly with the extinction boundary in the fossil record. The rocks at this boundary tell the story of the disaster. There is a massive spike in certain carbon isotopes, the chemical fingerprint of the colossal amounts of volcanic carbon dioxide that were released. There is evidence of catastrophic soil erosion as the world's forests died off and their roots no longer held the land together. And there is a strange fungal spike, a layer of rock around the world that is dominated by the fossilized spores of fungi, the only organisms that were thriving, having an absolute feast on the endless supply of dead and decaying wood that covered the planet. While the Siberian traps are the undisputed main culprit, scientists debate the exact kill mechanism. Was it the heat? The lack of oxygen? The acid rain? Or a complex combination of all of them hitting at once, a cascade of disasters that life simply could not withstand? For millions of years after the main pulse of death, the Earth was a desolate, broken, disaster world. The ecosystems were gone. But life, what little was left of it, clung on. In this empty world, one of the few success stories was a hardy, weedy, burrowing synapsid called Lystrosaurus. This pig-like herbivore, a type of dicynodont, is for a time the most common vertebrate on the entire planet. Its fossils are found everywhere, a lonely testament to survival in a world of ghosts. You find yourself in a broken, silent world. The volcanic fires of the Siberian traps have finally gone out, but their devastating work is done. The Permian is over. You are standing at the dawn of the Triassic period, the first chapter of the new Mesozoic era, the Age of Reptiles. But it is an age that begins not with a bang, but with a pained, ragged breath. This is a post-apocalyptic planet. The atmosphere is still choked with greenhouse gases, creating a global hothouse that is hot, dry, and desperately low in oxygen. You look out across a landscape that is reddish and barren, a world of vast deserts and scrublands. The lush green swamps of the Carboniferous are a forgotten memory. The The only plants that seem to be thriving are the toughest and most resilient hardy conifers and strange, fan-leaved ginkgo trees. The oceans are no better. They are eerily quiet and stagnant. For millions of years after the extinction, they are a strange, dysfunctional ecosystem that scientists sometimes call a strange-love ocean, a reference to the Doomsday film. The water is warm, acidic, and anoxic, a toxic brew that stifles recovery. It will take an incredibly long time for the intricate food webs of the sea to rebuild themselves. The fossil record of this time is stark, often called the zone of death for its profound lack of diversity. For millions of years, paleontologists find the fossils of the same few disaster taxa over and over again, all over the world. On land, the survivors of the Great Dying creep out into this empty world. For a time, the most common large animal on Earth is the hardy, tusked synapsid, Lystrosaurus. But our family's reign is over. The synapsids were decimated by the extinction, and in the harsh, low-oxygen world of the early Triassic, a different group of reptiles is better equipped to survive and thrive. The archosaurs, the ruling lizards. The archosaurs had existed as minor players in the background of the Permian, but in the vacant niches of the Triassic, they undergo an explosive diversification. They have a key advantage, a secret weapon hidden in their anatomy, a uniquely efficient, bird-like respiratory system. Unlike the simple in and out bellows of our own lungs, they have a system of air sacs that allows for a one-way flow of air. This means they can extract far more oxygen from every breath, a massive advantage in the thin, impoverished atmosphere of the post-extinction world. This superior breathing apparatus fuels their rise to power. The archosaur family tree quickly splits into two great branches, setting up the central conflict of the Triassic period. One branch is the pseudo-Suchians, the crocodile line archosaurs. These creatures become the dominant predators of the Triassic. You see one stalking across the arid plains, a fearsome beast called Post-Apocalyptic. It is a heavily built carnivore, 5 meters long, walking on 4 straight, pillar-like legs. It looks like a crocodile that has decided to get up and walk like a lion. The other branch is the Avimetatarsalians, the bird-line archosaurs. This group is, for now, less imposing, but it contains the ancestors of 2 groups that will one day have their moment in the sun, the pterosaurs and the dinosaurs. The story of the Triassic is the story of the competition between the last of the great synapsids and these 2 rising dynasties of archosaurs. And so, the central mystery of this era is staged. Why the archosaurs outcompeted the synapsids after the Permian extinction is a major question in paleontology. Was it their more efficient breathing that gave them the stamina to succeed in the low-oxygen world? Was it their more upright posture and locomotion? Or were they, in some sense, just lucky, in the right place at the right time to capitalize on the greatest catastrophe in Earth's history? Whatever the reason, the tide has turned. Our family's time in the sun is over, and a new dynasty is rising to take its place. You watch from the shade of a ginkgo tree as a fearsome crocodile-like Postosuchus stalks the arid plains. These crocodile-line archosaurs are the undisputed rulers of the Triassic. But in their shadow, living in the margins of their world, the other great branch of the archosaur family, the bird-line, is quietly conducting a series of radical experiments. A small creature, no bigger than a dog, darts out from behind a thicket of hardy conifers. It moves with a startling speed and agility. It is bipedal, balanced on 2 powerful hind legs, with a long tail stretched out behind it for balance. Its front limbs are smaller, tipped with sharp, grasping claws. You are looking at one of the very first dinosaurs. Forget the lumbering, city-crushing giants of popular imagination. The dinosaurs of the mid-Triassic are small, nimble, and fast. Creatures like Eoraptor, the dawn plunderer, or the slightly larger Herrerasaurus are opportunistic hunters, chasing down insects, small reptiles, and the shrew-like ancestors of mammals. They are not at the top of the food chain, but they possess a secret weapon, a key anatomical advantage that holds the seed of their future greatness. The defining characteristic of a dinosaur is its hip structure. Unlike the sprawling legs of a lizard, or the semi-erect stance of the crocodile line archosaurs, a dinosaur's hip socket is a hole, allowing its legs to be positioned directly underneath its body. This fully erect gait is far more efficient for running, and crucially, for breathing while running. They have the build of a marathon runner in a world of weightlifters. It's an advantage that, for now, allows them to survive, but will one day allow them to dominate. It's a charming irony that the name dinosaur, coined in the 19th century, means terrible lizard. These first dinosaurs were not particularly terrible, and they were not lizards. At the same time, another group from this same bird-line lineage is trying an even more audacious experiment. You see a flash of movement in the sky. It's not an insect. It has a bony skeleton. This is one of the first pterosaurs taking to the air. You watch as one, a creature like Eudimorphodon, lands clumsily on a branch. It is not a dinosaur, but a close cousin. Its wings are an engineering marvel, made of a tough, leathery membrane of skin stretched between its body and a single, massively elongated fourth finger. These early forms are small, with long, bony tails ending in a vein for stability, and their jaws are lined with sharp, fish-eating teeth. For tens of millions of years, these two new dynasties, the dinosaurs and the pterosaurs, remain minor players in the grand scheme of the Triassic. They live in the niches that the larger, more dominant crocodile line archosaurs and other strange Triassic reptiles do not. They are the underdogs, biding their time, perfecting their unique adaptations in a world that is not yet their own. Our clearest picture of this time comes from a fossil graveyard in Argentina known as the Isquigualasto Formation, or the Valley of the Moon. It is a perfect snapshot of this Triassic ecosystem. There, scientists find the fossilized bones of these small, early dinosaurs lying right alongside the much more numerous and massive fossils of the Rauisuchians and the strange, tusked, herbivorous reptiles called rhynchosaurs that were the dominant creatures of the time. The fossil evidence itself tells the story of the dinosaurs' humble beginnings. But while the origin of dinosaurs is now fairly well understood, the origin of their flying cousins remains shrouded in mystery. The exact origin of pterosaurs is still a mystery. We don't have a clear transitional fossil showing the evolution of their wings from the arm of a terrestrial ancestor. Unlike the beautiful step-by-step transitions we see for whales or for birds, the pterosaurs seem to just appear in the fossil record, already fully capable of powered flight. It is one of the great, unsolved puzzles in paleontology. For now, they are simply a sudden, miraculous new presence in the Triassic skies. You turn from the dusty, arid plains and walk towards the coast of the single, great, panthalassic ocean. While the archosaurs are busy establishing their dynasties on land, an entirely new drama is unfolding beneath the waves. The oceans have finally, after tens of millions of years, recovered from the devastation of the Great Dying. They are now home to a spectacular new dynasty of rulers, the marine reptiles. These are not dinosaurs that went for a swim. They are various other reptile groups that have left the land behind and returned to the ancestral home of the sea. You see a pod of them breaking the surface, leaping from the waves in a flash of spray. At first glance, you might mistake them for dolphins. They have the same streamlined, torpedo-shaped body, a powerful fish-like tail, and a long snout bristling with sharp teeth. These are the ichthyosaurs. They are a breathtaking example of convergent evolution, adapting to a life of speed in the water and arriving at a body plan remarkably similar to the dolphins that will evolve hundreds of millions of years in the future. They are so completely adapted to their marine life that they give birth to live young at sea, never needing to return to land for any reason. Paddling through the shallower coastal waters is another stranger group that is just beginning its rise, the plesiosaurs. They have a completely different design. Their bodies are broad and flat, almost like a turtle's without a shell. They don't swim with their tails. Instead, they use 4 powerful wing-like flippers to fly through the water, just as a sea lion does today. And from the front of their body extends the feature that will one day make them famous, a long, flexible, snake-like neck. While these giants are reclaiming the seas, you turn your attention back to the land and to the fate of our own lineage. The synapsids, who once ruled Pangaea, have been thoroughly beaten by the archosaurs in the competition for dominance in the daylight world. So, they adopt a new and brilliant strategy. If you can't win the day, you can win the night. They get smaller, and they vanish into the shadows. As dusk falls on the Triassic landscape, you see one scurrying through the undergrowth. It is a tiny, shrew-like creature, no bigger than a mouse. You are looking at one of the very first true mammals. To survive in a world ruled by reptilian giants, it has evolved a suite of new adaptations for a nocturnal life. It is warm-blooded, allowing it to generate its own body heat and stay active in the cool of the night. It is covered in a coat of insulating hair to keep that precious heat from escaping. And to navigate a world of darkness, its senses of smell and hearing have become incredibly acute. This nocturnal bottleneck in our own deep past has a direct legacy that sits inside your head right now. We, as mammals, owe our exceptionally good hearing to the challenges faced by these tiny ancestors. The 3 tiny bones in our middle ear, the hammer, anvil, and stirrup, which so perfectly amplify sound, evolved from bones that were once part of the jaw hinge in our earlier synapsid ancestors. This new, more sensitive arrangement was perfect for hearing the faint scuttling of an insect dinner or the soft footfalls of a predator in the dead of night. Our evidence for these first mammals often comes from their tiny, delicate fossil skulls. These fossils show a relatively enlarged brain case compared to their predecessors, and paleontologists can often identify them by spotting that unique and distinctly mammalian middle ear structure. An early mammal, like the much-studied Morganucodon, was likely an insect eater that still laid eggs like a modern platypus. But it almost certainly nursed its tiny, hatched offspring with milk, the single defining trait that unites all mammals. Just as this new world order seems to be settling in, the planet is rocked by yet another crisis. The Triassic period ends with another mass extinction event. The cause is still debated, but is likely linked to a massive wave of volcanic eruptions associated with the initial rifting and breaking apart of the supercontinent Pangaea. This extinction is strangely selective. The great crocodile-line archosaurs, like Post-Apocalyptic, are wiped out. The last of the large synapsids are also finished. But for some reason, the small, nimble dinosaurs sail through the crisis relatively unscathed. Why the dinosaurs survived the Triassic-Jurassic extinction while their crocodile-line archosaur competitors did not, is a huge puzzle. Perhaps their more efficient, bird-like breathing gave them an edge in an atmosphere disrupted by volcanic gases. Perhaps their ability to grow fast allowed them to recover more quickly. Whatever the reason, the slate has been wiped clean once again. The dinosaurs' main competitors are gone, and an empty world awaits them. You feel the air change. The dry, harsh heat of the Triassic gives way to a warm, damp humidity. The world has been reset by the last extinction, and the survivors are inheriting a new and greener world. This is the beginning of the Jurassic period. The dinosaurs, who spent millions of years as small, marginal players, now find themselves in a world empty of their main competitors. They seize the opportunity with an evolutionary ferocity, radiating into every available niche and, most famously, growing to sizes that defy the imagination. The planet itself is helping them. The supercontinent Pangaea, that single vast landmass, is beginning to break apart. A great rift is forming down its center, and into this wound the sea is pouring, creating the first infant stages of the Atlantic Ocean. This breakup has a profound effect on the climate. With more coastline, more moisture is carried inland. The endless arid deserts of the Triassic begin to retreat, replaced by lush, sprawling fern savannas and humid forests of conifers, dicots, and ginkgo trees. The world is becoming a warm, wet greenhouse, overflowing with plant life. For the dinosaurs, it is a buffet of continental proportions. And so, the Age of Titans begins. You stand in a clearing and feel the ground begin to tremble. A deep, rhythmic thudding that shakes your very bones. Through the giant tree ferns you see them, a herd of sauropods, the long-necked giants, moving with a slow, ponderous grace. You see the immense, low-slung body of a diplodocus, its neck and tail stretching out to incredible lengths. You see the giraffe-like form of a brachiosaurus, its neck held high, browsing from the tops of the tallest conifers. These are the largest animals to ever walk the earth. Their size is made possible by a suite of incredible adaptations. Their legs are like massive, weight-bearing pillars. Their bones, though huge, are surprisingly lightweight, honeycombed with air sacs connected to their respiratory system, a trait they share with their distant cousins, modern birds. This bird-like breathing also allowed them to process the vast amounts of oxygen needed to power their enormous bodies. Their feeding strategy was one of simple efficiency. They used their incredibly long necks to graze over a huge area of vegetation without having to move their colossal bodies, like a biological crane, stripping leaves with their simple, peg-like teeth. Of course, where there are giant herbivores, there will be giant predators. Stalking the edges of the sauropod herd is the lion of the Jurassic, the apex predator of its time. Allosaurus. It is a fearsome beast, a 9-meter-long theropod with a massive, lightweight skull, jaws filled with serrated blade-like teeth, and powerful 3-fingered hands tipped with wicked, curved claws. You watch as it observes the herd, perhaps looking for a young or sick individual that it can separate from the group. The evidence of their hunts is written in the bones of sauropods, which are sometimes found with the unmistakable gouges of Allosaurus teeth. Roaming through the ferny undergrowth is another icon of this age, the strange and wonderful Stegosaurus. You see its arched back, with the famous double row of large, kite-shaped plates running all the way to its tail. And at the end of its tail, it wields its primary weapon, 4 long, sharp spikes. This formidable weapon has an equally formidable and amusing name. It is officially known as the Thagomizer. The name comes not from a dusty scientific text, but from a 1982 Far Side cartoon in which a caveman teacher points to a diagram of a stegosaurus tail and explains the spikes were named after the late Thag Simmons. Paleontologists thought it was so perfect that the name was informally and then formally adopted. Our most perfect window into this world comes from a vast fossil deposit in the western United States called the Morrison Formation. It preserves this classic Jurassic ecosystem, a treasure trove where the fossilized bones of Allosaurus, Stegosaurus, and a dozen species of giant sauropods are all found together. We also find their trackways, the fossilized footprints that show us how they moved, and prove that the great sauropods often traveled together in herds. Even the name of this famous period comes from a specific place. The Jura Mountains on the border of France and Switzerland, where the limestone rocks of this age, rich in marine fossils, were first described. And yet, for all we know, these giants still present us with profound puzzles. How did sauropods pump blood all the way up their incredibly long necks to their heads? This is a major biomechanical puzzle. Did they have enormously powerful hearts, many times stronger than any animal alive today? Did they have a series of smaller helper hearts up their necks? Or did they have special valves in their arteries to prevent the blood from flowing backwards? It remains one of the great unsolved questions of the Age of Giants. You move forward in time, leaving the Jurassic behind, and entering the long, final chapter of the Age of Dinosaurs, the Cretaceous period. The world is continuing its slow, inexorable process of change. The breakup of Pangaea accelerates. The continents are now drifting into positions you would start to recognize on a modern map. Sea levels are incredibly high, flooding the low-lying interiors of the continents and creating vast, shallow inland seaways that split North America in two and turn Europe into a scattered collection of islands. As you walk through these new landscapes, you notice a subtle but profound change. The world is no longer just a symphony of greens and browns. For over 200 million years, the terrestrial world has been dominated by the somber hues of conifers, ferns, and cycads. But now, you see a splash of color in a clearing, a flash of red, a touch of yellow. You are witnessing a botanical revolution, the evolution of the first flowering plants, the angiosperms. This is more than just a decorative change. It is a fundamental shift in how the world works. A flower is a brilliant evolutionary strategy. Instead of just casting billions of pollen grains to the wind and hoping for the best, a plant can now use a flower with its bright colors, alluring scents, and sugary nectar to bribe an animal into doing the work of pollination. This kicks off a co-evolutionary dance between plants and insects that will change the world. Bees, butterflies, and ants begin to diversify alongside the flowers, each becoming specialized to the other in a partnership that has shaped the modern world. And this new, fast-growing, resilient, and often tougher type of vegetation creates a new challenge for the dinosaurs. The long-necked sauropods, adapted for browsing on the soft foliage of conifers, are now in decline. In their place, a whole new set of herbivorous dinosaurs evolves to cope with this new food source. You see a herd of iguanodontids with their specialized toothless beaks for cropping vegetation and their famous thumb spikes. Later in the Cretaceous, they give rise to the masters of chewing, the hadrosaurs, or duck-billed dinosaurs. These are the cows of the Cretaceous, roaming the plains in vast herds. Their broad, flattened beaks were perfect for snipping off twigs and leaves, but their real innovation was inside their mouths. They had developed dental batteries, hundreds, sometimes thousands of teeth packed together into a single, massive, continuous grinding surface. As old teeth wore down, new ones were constantly erupting to replace them, allowing the hadrosaurs to grind up the toughest of the new flowering plants. The rise of more sophisticated predators also drives the evolution of more sophisticated defenses. You see a low-slung, immensely broad creature that looks like a living tank. This is an ankylosaur. Its entire back is a mosaic of thick, bony plates called osteoderms embedded in its skin. Spikes jut out from its sides, and its head is a fortress of armored bone. And at the end of its powerful, muscular tail, it swings a colossal fused club of solid bone, a weapon capable of shattering the leg of even the largest predator. Elsewhere you see a herd of horned dinosaurs, the ceratopsians. A massive triceratops lowers its head to drink from a stream. Its head is a masterpiece of ornamentation and defense. A huge, solid shield of bone, the frill, protects its neck, while 3 long, sharp horns project from its face. While these horns were undoubtedly formidable weapons, many scientists theorize that the elaborate frills and horns of the ceratopsians were also used for display, much like the antlers of a moose or the tail of a peacock. They may have been brightly colored, used to signal health, to intimidate rivals and to attract mates. We can trace this great floral revolution in the fossil record. Often, the first evidence we find for flowering plants in a new area is not the leaves or stems, but their microscopic, durable pollen grains. Charles Darwin called the origin of flowering plants an abominable mystery because they seem to appear and diversify so suddenly in the fossil record. Their exact origin is still not fully understood, but their impact is undeniable. Flowering plants are the most diverse and widespread group of plants on Earth today, and their rise in the Cretaceous completely reshaped terrestrial ecosystems into a form we would finally begin to recognize. You have arrived at the final moments of the Mesozoic, the late Cretaceous. This is the grand finale, the culmination of 150 million years of dinosaur evolution. Diversity is at its absolute peak. The ecosystems are complex and stable. The world is ruled by a dynasty of tyrants on the land, in the air, and across the seas. A shadow falls over the herd of triceratops you were watching. From the edge of a forest of flowering trees, the king appears. Tyrannosaurus Rex. It is larger and more powerful than you can possibly imagine. This is no lumbering scavenger. Its brain cast shows it had enormous olfactory lobes, meaning it had a sense of smell that was almost supernatural. Its eyes are not on the sides of its head, but facing forwards, giving it the binocular vision and depth perception of a true predator. And its bite is the strongest of any land animal that has ever lived, a bone-shattering force capable of turning its prey's armor into shrapnel. And then there are its famously tiny 2-fingered arms. The function of T-Rex's tiny arms is a perennial source of debate among paleontologists. Were they ferociously strong, used to hold on to struggling prey at close quarters? Were they props to help the massive animal push its torso up from a resting position on the ground? Or were they simply vestigial leftovers, slowly shrinking away into evolutionary obsolescence? They remain one of the most charming and perplexing features of this ultimate predator. The Tyrant King is not the only sophisticated hunter here. You see a flash of movement in the undergrowth as a pack of dromaeosaurs flushes out a small mammal. These are the raptors. But you must forget the movie monsters. The real velociraptor was a much smaller, turkey-sized animal, and it was covered from head to tail in a thick coat of feathers. Its larger cousins, like Deinonychus, were the truly formidable pack hunters, armed with keen intelligence and their signature, sickle-shaped killing claws on their feet. The discovery of astonishingly well-preserved fossils in China, starting in the 1990s, provided the definitive visual proof of what scientists had long suspected from skeletal similarities. These fossils show the unmistakable imprints of a full coat of feathers around the bones of these dinosaurs, forever cementing the link between dinosaurs and their living descendants. And it is a simple, profound fact that birds are not just related to dinosaurs. They are dinosaurs. They are the single lonely branch of the avian dinosaurs that would make it through the coming apocalypse. A colossal shadow sweeps across the plain. You look up and see a Quetzalcoatlus soar overhead, the largest flying animal of all time. Its wingspan is over 11 meters, the size of a small airplane or a giraffe on its side. But recent studies suggest it wasn't a soaring seabird. It was a terrestrial stalker, walking on all fours using its folded wings as front limbs, striding across the landscape like a giant, terrifying stork, using its long, toothless beak to pluck small dinosaurs from the ground. It shares these skies with a growing diversity of true birds, from shorebird-like swimmers to forest-dwelling insect eaters. You turn your gaze to the vast, shallow sea that splits North America in two. The age of the ichthyosaurs is long over, but they have been replaced by something even more fearsome. The water erupts as a mosasaur, a 15-meter-long marine lizard, ambushes a large fish. It is not a dinosaur, but a true lizard, a close relative of modern monitor lizards. It is propelled by a powerful, shark-like tail fin with 4 flippers for steering. Its greatest weapon is its skull. Like a snake, it has a double-hinged jaw that can flex and bow outwards, allowing it to swallow enormous prey whole. The fossilized skeletons of these marine tyrants are sometimes found with the remains of their last meals. Fish, ammonites, seabirds, and even other smaller mosasaurs, preserved inside their rib cages. From the top of the food chain to the bottom, the world of the late Cretaceous is a vibrant, dangerous, and majestic place, an ecosystem perfected by time, unknowing that its time is about to run out. You have arrived at the last day of the Mesozoic era. You are standing on a hillside in the world that will one day become North America, 66 million years ago. It is a perfectly ordinary day. The air is warm and filled with the buzzing of insects and the calls of strange birds. In the valley below, a herd of triceratops moves slowly through a grove of flowering trees. A family of small, fuzzy mammals peeks out from a burrow at the base of a fern. The world is vibrant, stable, and completely unaware that it has less than an hour to live. You look up at the blue sky, and you notice a new star. It is visible in broad daylight, a tiny, brilliant pinprick of light. But it is growing brighter, and it is growing bigger. This is not a star. It is a mountain of rock, 10 kilometers wide, hurtling through the vacuum of space at over 70,000 kilometers per hour. It has been traveling on its collision course for millions of years, and its journey is about to end in the shallow tropical sea of what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The moment it strikes, time seems to break. The energy released is more than 1 billion times that of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The first thing to arrive at your position, thousands of miles away, is not sound or shock, but a flash of unimaginably bright thermal radiation. For 1,000 miles around the impact site, the world is instantly incinerated. A moment later, the ground beneath your feet begins to heave violently. A seismic wave, equivalent to an earthquake of magnitude 11 or 12, more powerful than any earthquake in recorded human history, is ripping through the crust of the entire planet. Then comes the sound and the fury. A hypersonic air blast radiates outwards from the impact, a shockwave of compressed air that flattens everything in its path. Forests that have stood for 1,000 years are pulverized in a fraction of a second. But the most terrifying and globally lethal effect is what happens next. The impact has vaporized trillions of tons of rock and blasted it high above the atmosphere. This curtain of molten debris now begins to rain back down all across the globe. As these tiny droplets of rock and glass, called spherules, re-enter the atmosphere, friction heats them to a glowing red-hot incandescence. The sky itself turns into a vast, radiant broiler oven, cooking any animal caught in the open. The heat is so intense that it ignites vegetation worldwide. Global wildfires begin to rage, turning the world into a planet of fire. For those near a coast, a mega tsunami, hundreds of meters high, scours the continental shores with unimaginable violence. Our smoking gun for this event is the Chicxulub crater itself. For decades it lay hidden, buried under a kilometer of younger sediment. But its vast 180-kilometer-wide circular scar is now clearly visible through geological mapping. The global evidence is a thin, dark line in the rock record, found on every continent. This is the KPG boundary layer. It is a layer of clay rich in the element iridium, rare on Earth's surface but common in asteroids. It is filled with shocked quartz, whose crystalline structure has been deformed by an intense impact, and it is littered with those tiny glassy spherules. It is the fingerprint of the killer, left at the scene of the crime all over the world. While the impact is the primary cause of the extinction, some scientists argue that the dinosaurs were already in decline. For 100,000 years leading up to the impact, massive, prolonged volcanic eruptions in India, known as the Deccan Traps, had already been stressing the global climate. The asteroid, in this view, was the final brutal knockout punch to an ecosystem that was already staggering. Perhaps the most poignant evidence for this terrible day comes from a single, miraculous fossil site in North Dakota called Tanis. It appears to have preserved the exact moments in the hour following the impact. It is a chaotic jumble of freshwater fish, trees, land animals, and even marine ammonites, all washed together and buried instantly by a massive 30-foot-tall wave of water. This was not a tsunami from the ocean, but a seisure, a colossal inland slosh in a river system, triggered by the seismic shock of the impact thousands of miles away. The most incredible detail is what was found in the gills of the exquisitely preserved fossil fish, the tiny glass spherules from the impact. They died breathing in the very dust of the asteroid that had sealed their world's fate. This is just the first day. The long, dark night of the impact winter is still to come. The fires have burned themselves out, leaving behind a world shrouded in smoke and ash. But the worst is yet to come. You are now entering the long, dark night of the impact winter. The trillions of tons of dust, soot, and vaporized sulfur that were blasted into the stratosphere have now spread across the globe, forming a thick, impenetrable blanket that blocks the light of the sun. Day turns into a perpetual twilight gloom. On the ground, temperatures plummet, and a bitter, unnatural cold settles over the planet. This darkness is a death sentence. Without sunlight, photosynthesis grinds to a halt. The plants, the foundation of almost every ecosystem, begin to wither and die. The great food chains, built up over 150 million years, collapse with breathtaking speed. The giant herbivorous dinosaurs, like Triceratops and the duck-billed hadrosaurs, are the first to starve. And once they are gone, the mighty carnivores, including the great Tyrannosaurus rex, soon follow. In the seas, the plankton die off, and the entire marine food web implodes, taking the mosasaurs and the ammonites with it. The pterosaurs vanish from the darkened skies. All told, over 75% of all species on Earth are wiped from existence, but in the ruins, there are survivors. Life, as it always does, clings on in the shadows, and the profile of a survivor tells you everything about the nature of the catastrophe. Small size was a crucial advantage. A tiny body requires far less food to survive. A generalist diet was also key. Creatures that could eat anything, seeds, insects, roots, decaying matter, had a much better chance than specialists who relied on a single type of fresh plant. And most importantly, shelter was the ticket to survival. The animals that could burrow deep underground, like our tiny mammalian ancestors, or those that lived in freshwater river systems, like crocodiles and turtles, were shielded from the worst of the initial heat blast and the harsh winter that followed. After years of darkness, the dust finally begins to settle, and the first pale rays of sunlight touch the earth once more. You look out upon a silent, grey, ghostly landscape, covered in a blanket of fine ash. But life is already returning. The first plants to recolonize the devastated world are the hardiest of opportunists, the ferns. For thousands of years, the landscape is dominated by vast, monotonous fern spikes, a sign of a planetary ecosystem rebooting itself. The fossil record shows this with perfect clarity. Immediately above that dark, iridium-rich boundary line, the rich diversity of fossil pollen vanishes, replaced by a layer composed almost entirely of fern spores. The birds that survived were not the impressive seabirds or specialized forest dwellers. The quirky survivors were likely the small, ground-dwelling species, similar to modern quail or tinamous. Their secret weapon was their diet. They could eat seeds, which can lie dormant in the soil for years, providing a crucial, long-lasting food source when nothing else was growing. Every single one of the more than 10,000 species of birds alive today is descended from these few, scrappy, seed-eating survivors. And what of our ancestors? As the ferns reclaim the land, the mammals emerge from their burrows. They step out of the darkness of the impact winter, but also out of the long, 150 million year-long shadow of the dinosaurs. They find themselves in an empty world, a world of immense opportunity. The long age of reptiles is over. The age of mammals is about to begin. The exact duration of this planetary nightmare is still a matter of scientific investigation. How long did the impact winter last? And how quickly did the planet's climate recover? Models range from a few years to several decades of darkness and cold, followed by a long period of intense greenhouse warming from all the CO2 that was released. But through it all, our ancestors endured, waiting for their moment in the sun. And now, our long, long journey through the deep past comes to a gentle close. We have traveled across more than 500 million years of lost time, from the first ghostly gardens of the Ediacaran seas to the rise of the first strange animals in the Cambrian Explosion. We have witnessed the greening of the continents, stood in the silent alien forests of the Devonian, and felt the humid, oxygen-rich air of the Carboniferous on our skin. We have walked with the sail-backed synapsids that were our own distant kin, and we have survived the great dying that nearly ended all life. We stood in the shadow of the Jurassic giants, and we watched the last day of the dinosaurs as fire rained down from the sky. All of that sound and fury, all of that struggle and innovation, all of those triumphs and catastrophes have led to this. A quiet room, the soft hum of a fan, the feeling of your own slow, steady breathing. The echoes of those ancient worlds have faded away, the dust of ages has settled, and the planet has found its peace once more. And in that peace, a new kind of life, the kind that can look back and wonder about it all, was finally given its chance. And so, as the last images of these lost worlds dissolve into the quiet darkness of your room, you can let your own mind settle, knowing that you are a part of this impossibly long and beautiful story. Just let the deep, slow rhythm of geological time carry you now into a calm and peaceful sleep.